Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy. Back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Had Power Amplifier Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya had always felt the weight of his circumstances. As an orphan, he had never known the warmth of a family, and the orphanage where he lived was far from a nurturing environment. The owners, Tengen Torvald and Suzuki Sakura, were indifferent and often cruel, treating the children as burdens rather than blessings. Despite this, Izuku took it upon himself to care for the younger kids, treating them like siblings while keeping his distance to avoid the pain of attachment. Growing up, Izuku had been bullied and isolated, leading him to believe he was quirkless. However, deep within him lay the dormant power of one for all, a quirk that would awaken when he was older and strong enough to handle it. He was innocent and naive, particularly when it came to matters of the heart, but he longed for connection and understanding. As he navigated his challenging life, he learned that not everyone was born equal. He often reflected on his past, feeling the sting of rejection and loneliness. The only things he knew about himself were his name and his birthday, July 15th. The mystery of his origins haunted him, and the fact that no one had ever wanted to adopt him only deepened his sense of worthlessness. The orphanage was a place of despair. Tengen and Suzuki, a seemingly perfect couple, were anything but. They argued constantly, lamenting their lives and their disdain for the children they were supposed to care for. They had initially considered getting rid of the kids but soon realized they could profit from them. The money they earned went straight to their own indulgences, leaving the children neglected and uncared for. Despite the presence of professional heroes who occasionally visited, they turned a blind eye to the suffering within the orphanage. This indifference fueled Izuku's determination to protect the other kids. He resolved to be their guardian, to ensure they felt cared for and valued, even if it meant facing the harsh realities of their situation alone. As Izuku prepared to unlock his true potential, he dreamt of a future where he could finally find a place to belong, surrounded by friends who understood him. Little did he know, his journey would lead him to a group of remarkable girls who would show him the meaning of love and friendship, helping him realize the dreams he had held onto for so long. Midoriya had taken on a couple of jobs to earn enough money to provide food for the younger kids, who were often left with expired items or leftovers. He also bought them some clothes as they were wearing old, ragged garments. Occasionally, Torvald and Sakura noticed his efforts, and he faced consequences. They would either take the money he earned, sell the items he bought for the kids, or consume the food intended for them. Whenever they were angry and sought to vent their frustrations on the children, Midoriya would tell the kids to hide while he took the blame. This cycle had persisted for years. He always helped the kids when they were adopted, ensuring that their new parents were suitable for them. However, Torvald and Sakura disapproved of his assistance, as they often chose terrible parents and scammed them into paying exorbitant amounts for the children, lying about how they cared for them. Life in the orphanage was unbearable, and Midoriya had hoped for a change for the better. However, by the time he turned 13, everything would change. One morning, Sakura yelled for him to come downstairs and clean up. Midoriya responded, quickly changing and heading to the kitchen. As he walked in, he noticed some of the younger kids playing, which brought a smile to his face until Sakura stormed in, rudely interrupting their fun. She shouted at the kids to stop making noise, but they ignored her, which only fueled her frustration. Torvald then entered, yelling angrily for everyone to quiet down. The kids froze, on the verge of tears, but Midoriya stepped in to defend them. He insisted that they were just playing and not hurting anyone, standing his ground despite Torvald's towering presence. Torvald, taken aback by Midoriya's defiance, approached him menacingly. Midoriya repeated his plea for Torvald to leave the kids alone, asserting that they were simply having fun. Torvald, angered by the confrontation, grabbed Midoriya by the collar, preparing to retaliate when Sakura intervened, dismissing Midoriya as worthless except for his chores. This comment ignited Midoriya's anger, and he almost retorted before Torvald threatened him, raising his fist. Midoriya fell silent and was released. Sakura then ordered him to prepare breakfast, and he sighed in resignation, complying. After making breakfast for Torvald and Sakura, Midoriya quickly prepared a meal for the younger kids, urging them to eat quickly and quietly. He knew their tendency to take their time often resulted in wasted food. Once they finished, he washed the dishes and got ready for school, aware that it was his final year of middle school. Before leaving, he entrusted some older kids to look after the younger ones, wary of leaving them alone with Torvald and Sakura. On his way to school, Midoriya saw a group of friends chatting and laughing together, which saddened him. Making friends was difficult, especially since he was considered quirkless though he had a secret. When he was 4, a hospital van had come to the orphanage, and during his evaluation, they discovered he possessed a quirk unlike any they had seen. They told him it held immense potential but suggested he might be a late bloomer, advising him to exercise and eat healthily to activate it. When he shared this with other kids, one dismissed him as a liar, claiming he was quirkless. This made it even harder for Midoriya to connect with others, especially when they learned he was an orphan and made cruel jokes about it. The teachers ignored the bullying, often encouraging it, which left Midoriya feeling isolated. He learned that he couldn't rely on anyone, especially those who were supposed to help. Despite his struggles, he once had a close friend who shared his experiences, helping care for the younger kids and dealing with Torvald and Sakura together. However, she was adopted one day, leaving Midoriya heartbroken. She promised to visit, but those were the last words he heard from her, and he never saw her again. As he walked to school, an explosion echoed in the distance. Curious, he rushed toward the sound and witnessed an epic battle between heroes and villains. Inspired, he pulled out his journal, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13. The clash ended, he realized he was late for school and hurried there, arriving just in time for class. As he settled into his seat, the teacher entered with papers in hand and instructed the class to settle down. The year was nearing its end, and the teacher addressed the class with a serious demeanor, reminding them that they would soon be entering high school. This meant they needed to start thinking about their futures. The students felt a wave of nervousness wash over them at his words. However, the teacher's expression softened as he continued, revealing that he believed they all aspired to be heroes. With a smile, he tossed the papers in the air, and the classroom erupted in cheers. Most of the students showcased their quirks, while Midoriya remained focused on his notebook. The teacher attempted to regain control of the class, reminding them of the rules. Just as he was about to continue, a voice interrupted him. Katsuki Bakugo, leaning back in his chair with his feet on the desk, dismissed his classmates as mere extras who would never amount to anything more than sidekicks. His words struck a nerve, igniting anger among the other students. They shouted back at Bakugo, demanding respect and challenging his arrogance. Bakugo, unfazed, declared that he would take them all on. Midoriya, observing the chaos, shook his head in frustration, thinking about how foolish they all were. The teacher then pulled out Bakugo's application to UA College, the most prestigious hero school. The revelation shocked the class, but Bakugo boasted about acing the mock exam and confidently proclaimed that he would become the wealthiest hero, surpassing even All Might. The teacher turned to Midoriya, asking if he also intended to apply to UA. The classroom fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Midoriya, still focused on his notebook, finally looked up and confirmed his intention. Laughter erupted from his classmates, who mocked him for thinking he could be accepted without a quirk. Annoyed by their ridicule, Midoriya defended himself, insisting that he would never know unless he tried. Before he could finish, Bakugo interrupted him, angrily asserting that Midoriya was nothing but a quirkless loser. This only fueled Midoriya's frustration, as Bakugo's words had long shaped others' perceptions of him. Midoriya retorted that he was not quirkless but simply a late bloomer. Bakugo scoffed at this, mocking him further. Midoriya, trying to lighten the mood, joked that if Bakugo were All Might's son, he would be ruining his father's reputation. This elicited laughter from the students and even the teacher, further infuriating Bakugo. As Bakugo charged at him, the teacher intervened, calling for calm and redirecting the lesson. During lunch, Midoriya sat alone, engrossed in his hero notebook. Unbeknownst to him, Bakugo and his friends approached. Sensing danger, Midoriya instinctively dodged an attack from Bakugo, causing him to miss and hit the table instead. The cafeteria buzzed with surprise as Midoriya's classmates witnessed his quick reflexes. Bakugo, irritated, accused Midoriya of trying to be funny. Despite Midoriya's reluctance to engage, Bakugo continued to provoke him, claiming he would take him down. As Bakugo lunged with a punch, Midoriya dodged again, leaving the students in awe. Bakugo, frustrated by his inability to land a hit, threw another punch, but Midoriya felt time slow down as he evaded it. Confusion washed over him as he wondered what was happening. Bakugo, growing increasingly impatient, charged at Midoriya with a powerful swing. Midoriya leaned back, narrowly avoiding the blow, which left the onlookers astonished. Just then, one of Bakugo's friends attempted to hold Midoriya in place, but sensing the move, Midoriya executed a backflip, evading capture. The cafeteria erupted in astonished murmurs, with Bakugo and his friends equally surprised by Midoriya's agility. One of Bakugo's goons turned to him, urging him to take action, but Bakugo, frustrated, pushed his friend aside, ready to confront Midoriya once more. He turned to Midoriya, growing increasingly frustrated, and began to throw punches at him, but Midoriya dodged each one with agility. Midoriya managed to block two of Bakugo's strikes before Bakugo unleashed his strongest punch. However, Midoriya caught it firmly, gripping Bakugo's wrist and slowly moving it toward his own face. The students around them were astonished by Midoriya's unexpected strength, and Midoriya himself felt a surge of annoyance rising within him. Then, something extraordinary happened that left the entire school in awe. Midoriya began to glow with a green light, surrounded by crackling energy. He felt a surge of power and declared that he had reached his limit with the situation. As he prepared to retaliate, he struck Bakugo in the face with such force that it created a powerful gust of wind, pushing back nearby students and scattering objects. Bakugo was sent crashing into a wall, leaving a significant impact and rendering him unconscious. The students were left in shock, turning their gazes toward Midoriya, who was equally surprised by his own display of power. He stared at his glowing hands, realizing that his quirk had finally been unlocked. As he processed this revelation, he noticed the students watching him, some still on the ground while others were getting up. Many of them had bullied him in the past, and they instinctively took a step back, wary of becoming his next target. Feeling anxious about the possibility of being reported to a teacher, Midoriya fled the school, running until he reached a beach littered with debris, known as Takoba Municipal Beach Park. The messy surroundings made it difficult for him to see where he was going. Determined to activate his quirk again, he struggled to maintain control over it. With newfound determination, he thought about how his quirk could help him achieve his dream of becoming a hero. Excited yet aware of his limitations, he devised a plan to train himself to better manage his abilities. As he surveyed the trash around him, an idea struck him: he would clean up the beach, helping the environment while simultaneously getting stronger. Later, Midoriya visited a bookstore to purchase workout books before returning to the orphanage to fulfill his daily responsibilities. He watched over the children, ensuring they were fed and cared for, all while dealing with Torvald and Sakura. As night fell, Midoriya tucked the kids into bed and made his way to his room in the attic, which was filled with items he had collected over the years. His space was a treasure trove of movies, video games, board games, and a vast library of books, including comics and novels that would delight any enthusiast. After brushing his teeth, he lay in bed, contemplating his journey to UA College. He recalled how UA had transitioned from a high school to a college due to past incidents involving villains that had endangered students. The staff believed that older students would be better equipped to handle such threats. As he reflected on his quirk training, he realized he would need to work harder than anyone else to gain admission to UA. Turning off his bedside lamp, he prepared for sleep, thinking about how his journey was just beginning. The next morning, Midoriya woke up early, ready to start his workout routine. It was Friday, and he planned to begin his training in earnest the following day. Word had spread about his quirk, and the bullying he had endured had ceased, with students keeping their distance after witnessing the power he had displayed against Bakugo. Bakugo, nursing injuries from their encounter, was furious at being defeated so easily and humiliated in front of the entire school. His anger only fueled his resentment toward Midoriya, who he believed had mocked him. Despite his attempts to confront Midoriya again, teachers intervened, preventing any further altercations. Occasionally, Midoriya found himself in trouble, but his classmates were beginning to support him, making his life a bit easier. Though things were starting to improve, Midoriya remained true to himself. When he revealed his quirk to Torvald and Sakura, they were initially surprised but soon realized the implications of his power. One day, when Torvald attempted to intimidate Midoriya, his quirk activated once more, allowing him to evade Torvald's punches effortlessly. In a swift motion, he countered, sending Torvald across the room. Sakura rushed Torvald to the hospital, where he received treatment for his injuries. This incident only deepened Torvald's animosity toward Midoriya, but he remained unfazed, knowing that he had to protect the children from further bullying. With determination, Midoriya dedicated himself to his workout routine, returning to Takoba Municipal Beach Park to clean the beach and build his strength. Over the next 10 months, he transformed the area, initially struggling to move even small pieces of trash. However, as time passed, he grew stronger, able to lift heavier debris, including refrigerators and even cars. As for school, Midoriya sometimes arrived tired due to his rigorous workout routine and the lack of sleep he was getting. He always made time for the children at the orphanage and their adoption by loving families. After 10 months, Midoriya began training to use his quirk. While practicing, he encountered a man named Toshinori Yagi, who he had observed during his time cleaning the beach. Yagi offered an intriguing suggestion that led Midoriya to discover he was All Might. Overwhelmed with joy at meeting his hero, Midoriya asked a long-awaited question, prompting All Might to affirm that he could indeed become a hero. This heartfelt moment brought tears of happiness to Midoriya's eyes. When Midoriya attempted to use his quirk, he found it difficult to control. Following All Might's advice, he threw a punch that created a massive impact on the ocean, making it seem as if he had split the water in two. The experience was incredible but also very painful. Midoriya looked at his arm and saw it swollen and injured. He cried out in pain while All Might was shocked and concerned that his quirk was so powerful it had caused such an injury. All Might called for assistance, and soon a heroine named Recovery Girl arrived. She scolded All Might for pushing Midoriya too hard. After healing Midoriya, she advised him not to overdo it and suggested All Might contact his former mentor for guidance. In the aftermath, All Might introduced a new training plan for Midoriya and mentioned reaching out to his mentor for help in better controlling his quirk. After finishing the call, All Might informed Midoriya that his mentor would arrive soon. While waiting, they engaged in conversation to get to know each other better. Midoriya shared some details about himself but chose not to mention his status as an orphan. Soon, All Might's mentor approached them, immediately scolding All Might for his teaching methods. Midoriya learned that his mentor was Gran Torino, a retired hero and former UA staff member who had trained All Might when he was Midoriya's age. Gran Torino agreed to train Midoriya, and it was clear that All Might was apprehensive about the training methods he would employ. For the next 2 months, Gran Torino trained Midoriya, and he quickly understood why All Might feared his mentor's methods. The training was intense and exhausting. In the second month, Gran Torino instructed him to fetch a frozen pastry. When Midoriya retrieved one from his bag, a realization struck him. He declared that he was the frozen pastry, which confused both Gran Torino and All Might. He explained that he had focused his quirk on just one body part and decided to channel it throughout his entire body, naming this ability Full Cowling. Since then, he had been able to use his quirk more effectively. A year passed since his quirk activation. Midoriya graduated from middle school and entered high school. Overall, high school was going well, but he still faced challenges in making friends. He continued to be bullied by Bakugo and now had to deal with a new bully, Nito Monoma, who was even more annoying than Bakugo but lacked his ego. When Midoriya expressed his desire to attend UA college, Monoma mocked him, claiming someone like him would never succeed. To make matters worse, he discovered Midoriya was still an orphan and made cruel jokes about it. Despite these challenges, Midoriya encountered a girl with blonde hair styled in 2 messy buns, striking yellow cat-like eyes and fangs. They had a brief conversation before she mysteriously vanished, leaving everyone puzzled. Throughout high school, he continued to train his quirk. Gran Torino and All Might advised him to pace himself since the entrance exams were still 4 years away. Midoriya complied but practiced his quirk in secret. He also met another kind person, a short girl with brown bob-cut hair that covered her eyes. He stood up for her when some students made fun of her quirk. After the situation calmed down, he turned to check on her, only to find she had disappeared. Midoriya began reading books about martial arts, knowing there would be times when he couldn't rely on his quirk. He resolved that if he ever encountered Eraserhead, he would still stand his ground. Even while in high school, Midoriya made time for the children at the orphanage. 4 years later, Midoriya turned he was nearing the end of high school, with graduation approaching and the UA entrance exam set for 3 weeks from now. Although he was still not adopted, he had come to terms with the fact that no one wanted to adopt an adult, and he had given up on finding a family of his own. In terms of his quirk, Midoriya had made significant progress and could now handle 45% of its power. During this time, a new hero emerged, a young heroine named Empty Lady, who quickly became the second most popular heroine after Midnight. Midoriya encountered her a few times, and she was surprisingly kind, even expressing her hope that he would succeed. Her encouragement motivated him to work harder, knowing that a hero believed in him. As graduation approached, Midoriya dedicated the next 3 weeks to preparing for the entrance exam. During his training, he learned that UA had introduced dormitories for students, which posed a dilemma for him as he didn't want to leave the children alone, especially with someone like Torvald and Sakura around. Finally, the day of the UA entrance exam arrived, marking the beginning of Midoriya's journey to becoming a hero. Standing before the school he had dreamed of attending since childhood, he felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. He reminded himself that this was the moment he had been waiting for and that he could do this. With a firm resolve, he calmed himself down, ready to face the challenges ahead. As Midoriya was about to start walking to UA, someone shoved him hard, causing him to nearly lose his balance. He turned around to see Bakugo striding beside him. Bakugo glared at Midoriya, declaring that he should get out of his way, warning him that if he got in his path again he would face dire consequences. Midoriya muttered under his breath, feeling frustrated, but he quickly composed himself and continued on his way to UA. While walking, Midoriya scanned the area for other UA students when he noticed a girl stumbling over her own feet. Reacting quickly, he rushed to her side and caught her just before she fell. He asked if she was okay as he helped her regain her balance. The girl had brunette hair styled in a bob, a round face, and rosy cheeks that gave her a charming appearance. Midoriya couldn't help but think she looked like an angel, but he quickly shook that thought away as she smiled at him. She thanked him for his help, her cute smile making Midoriya feel a bit shy. He brushed it off, saying it was nothing and that anyone would have done the same. He added that it would have been bad luck if she had fallen. The girl explained that she had been so nervous about the day that she hadn't been paying attention to where she was going. Midoriya reassured her that it was perfectly fine to feel nervous, admitting he felt the same way. Grateful for his kindness, she thanked him again, and Midoriya realized he didn't know her name. Before she could introduce herself, an announcement blared over the intercom, indicating that the exams would start soon. The girl exclaimed that they needed to hurry and dashed toward the entrance, with Midoriya following closely behind. 2 hours later, after completing the written portion of the exam, Midoriya found himself seated in the auditorium next to his former childhood friend, Katsuki Bakugo. He sighed internally, wishing for a distraction as he turned his attention to the stage. A figure resembling a punk rock star with blonde hair and sunglasses stepped onto the stage, introducing himself as Present Mike, the voice hero. He attempted to energize the crowd, but was met with silence. Undeterred, he moved on to explain how the practical exam would unfold, trying to engage the audience with his enthusiastic gestures. Midoriya watched in awe, his admiration for Present Mike shining through. He recalled how he always listened to the hero's radio shows and marveled at his powerful quirk, which could create sound waves capable of incredible destruction. Lost in his thoughts, he straightened his back, excitement radiating from him, unaware of Bakugo's growing irritation. Bakugo snapped at Midoriya, telling him to be quiet or he would face serious consequences. The other students had mixed reactions to Bakugo's outburst, some snickered, while others looked annoyed or indifferent. Just then, a girl with frog-like features sitting next to Midoriya spoke up, defending him against Bakugo's harsh words. Her fierce gaze made Bakugo retreat slightly, muttering in annoyance before turning away. Once the tension eased, the frog girl returned to her seat, glancing at Midoriya, who was lost in thought, feeling embarrassed about his earlier excitement. She decided to tap him on the shoulder, causing him to jump in surprise. Other students turned to look at him, some laughing while others wore deadpan expressions. Midoriya sank into his seat, feeling flustered, especially when he heard a giggle from the girl beside him. Apologizing for startling him, she spoke softly, which only made Midoriya more nervous. Trying to lighten the mood, he joked about how her action had scared him, attempting to make her laugh. He was met with silence. Midoriya turned his head slowly to the front while smiling awkwardly, then rested his head on the desk with a thud that startled the other students. He thought to himself that he couldn't believe he had embarrassed himself again, especially in front of a pretty girl. He quickly chastised himself for his thoughts. The girl giggled at his antics, causing Midoriya to flinch as he lifted his head to look at her. She was resting her finger against her mouth, her expression blank yet slightly smiling. She whispered to him, trying to make him feel better, that it wasn't great but at least it was an attempt. Midoriya stammered his gratitude, thanking her for the compliment. She continued, suggesting that he ask Present Mike for his autograph after the exam, confident that he would be happy to meet a fan. Midoriya's eyes darted to Present Mike, who was busy searching for the remote to start the presentation. He then looked back at the girl, who was observing him with calm curiosity. Feeling the need to ease the awkwardness, Midoriya spoke about how cool Present Mike was, explaining how he used his quirk to fight and warn civilians of danger, ultimately saving lives. He added that he enjoyed his radio shows, nervously fiddling with his fingers while offering a small smile. Unbeknownst to him, the girl, along with a few other examinees behind them, was listening to his conversation, intrigued by his enthusiasm for heroes. The girl chimed in, mentioning that she listened to present mixed radio shows weekly with her siblings, who always enjoyed them. This made Midoriya blush even more, realizing he was having a friendly conversation with the cute frog girl for the second time that day. She then introduced herself as Tsuyu Azui, asking him to call her by her nickname. Surprised, Midoriya introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya and was about to say her full name when she gently placed a finger over his mouth, requesting that he call her Tsu instead. He complied, asking what she wanted him to call her, and she confirmed that Tsu was her preferred name. Midoriya shared an anecdote about how Present Mike once saved 10 bystanders from a rain of glass caused by a villain's scream, noting how heroes like him put smiles on people's faces, much like All Might. Tsu responded positively, agreeing with him and encouraging him to feel motivated for the exam, which made him smile. While they shared this moment, other examinees were listening in and were impressed by Midoriya's confidence. One boy expressed his admiration for Midoriya's deep thoughts, while a girl sitting next to him urged Midoriya to continue sharing his insights, finding his passion endearing. Tsu smiled at him, encouraging him to keep talking. She asked if he had heard of a hero named Selkie. Midoriya was momentarily taken aback but soon found his voice to respond affirmatively. However, his answer was interrupted when Present Mike finally found the remote and announced the start of the presentation, asking if everyone was ready. Midoriya glanced at Tsu and the other examinees, apologizing for not finishing their conversation. Tsu reassured him that they could continue their discussion after the exam, smiling warmly. The other examinees chimed in, expressing their disappointment at the interruption and their interest in what Midoriya had to say. Present Mike then announced that they would participate in a 10-minute mock battle in a simulated suburban city, instructing them to prepare for their specified battle centers. Midoriya, Tsu, and Bakugo looked at their examine ID cards, ready for the challenge ahead. Midoriya and Tsu were stationed in Battle Center B, while Bakugo was at Battle Center A. Bakugo realized that they were being separated to prevent them from working together. Midoriya glanced at a card, which Bakugo noticed and reacted to with irritation, warning him to keep his eyes off it. Midoriya instinctively flinched at Bakugo's tone. Tsu intervened, telling Bakugo to leave Midoriya alone and suggesting that he was simply curious about Bakugo's assigned battle center. Bakugo, feeling provoked, challenged Tsu, drawing the attention of other examinees, including Midoriya. Present Mike, noticing the escalating tension, warned the students to stop arguing or risk being removed from the exam. Once the situation calmed down, Present Mike explained the exam rules, stressing the importance of choosing targets wisely and refraining from attacking other examinees. He animatedly illustrated his points with gestures and a video game display. During the explanation, a tall boy with dark blue hair and rectangular glasses raised his hand to ask a question. He expressed concern about an apparent error in the official UA materials regarding the types of robots listed for the exam, emphasizing that as aspiring pro-heroes, they expected accuracy from such a prestigious school. He then turned his attention to Midoriya, questioning whether he was paying attention and implying that he was not taking the exam seriously. In a lighthearted response, Midoriya pretended to snore before waking up and jokingly asking if the boy had said something. This reaction caused laughter among the other examinees, including Tsu and even Bakugo, who struggled to suppress his amusement. Present Mike joined in the laughter, appreciating Midoriya's humor. The tall boy, flustered by Midoriya's antics, insisted that he was serious. Midoriya reassured him that he was indeed paying attention but suggested that the boy was being overly robotic in his demeanor. Midoriya then playfully interrupted him again, prompting Present Mike to thank him for the comedic relief. Present Mike clarified that the fourth type of robot was merely an obstacle and explained that each examinee would face different challenges in various sectors. After the stadium announcements, the examinees were sent to their respective sectors. Midoriya learned that Bakugo would be in Sector B, which relieved him somewhat. As he waited for the second part of the exam, he felt a mix of nerves and hope for Tsu and the others he had met that day. While observing the other examinees, Midoriya spotted the girl he had saved from falling earlier. Noticing her nervousness, he decided to approach her to offer some encouragement. However, he was intercepted by the tall boy from earlier, who accused him of trying to distract her. The other examinees watched, some expressing disapproval of the boy's behavior. Midoriya, feeling irritated, pushed the boy's hand away and explained that he was merely trying to comfort the girl. Ignoring the boy's protests, he walked over to the brunette. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, which startled her at first. Recognizing him, she calmed down and admitted that she was feeling a bit nervous. Midoriya reassured her that it was perfectly normal to feel that way and encouraged her to give it her all, emphasizing that fear should never hold them back from pursuing their dreams. Unbeknownst to Midoriya, other students were listening to his encouraging words, and they felt inspired by his positivity. The girl expressed her gratitude, saying she felt better and more motivated thanks to his support. Midoriya, pleased to have helped, realized he hadn't learned her name yet. Just as she was about to introduce herself, the intercom announced that the second part of the exam was about to begin. Midoriya, sensing the urgency, charged up his quirk and dashed toward the opening gates, surprising the other examinees. Some accused him of cheating, but Present Mike reminded everyone that in real-life battles, there are no countdowns. With that, all the examinees rushed in to face the robots. As they entered the arena, they noticed that Midoriya had already taken down several robots, prompting everyone to quickly disperse in search of more targets. Midoriya was utilizing 10% of his quirk, swiftly dismantling robots with precision. After finishing off one robot, he spotted another advancing towards a girl who was oblivious to the danger. Without hesitation, he rushed in, pulling her out of harm's way before delivering a powerful punch to the robot, reducing it to scrap. He approached the girl he had just saved and asked if she was all right. As he looked at her, he realized he could only see her clothes, quickly understanding that this was due to her quirk. She responded, a bit flustered, acknowledging his help and apologizing for still being invisible. As she deactivated her quirk, she became visible, revealing long, messy, wavy chartreuse hair with pink specks, bushy eyelashes, thin eyebrows, and large, round eyes with teal on the outside and yellow on the inside. Midoriya thought she looked cute but quickly dismissed the thought, not wanting to come off as awkward. He quietly expressed his surprise at her appearance, which made her blush. Unaware of the effect his words had on her, he advised her to be more careful in the future before rushing off to engage more robots, leaving her feeling flustered. Meanwhile, in the UA staff room, the faculty observed the candidates with growing admiration. A creature resembling a dog-mouse bear commented on their impressive skills, prompting Midnight to agree, noting that some candidates stood out more than others. Present Mike playfully warned Midnight to tone down her gaze, while Nizu acknowledged their enthusiasm. Aizawa pointed out Midoriya, the boy with messy green hair, as he caught their attention. The screen magnified, showcasing Midoriya's impressive feats of saving others and defeating robots. Nizu searched for Midoriya's file but found little information, leading All Might to suggest enlisting Detective Tsukachi to gather more details. Back at the battlegrounds, Midoriya wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling satisfied with his performance. Just as he was about to leave, a deep rumble caught his attention. The candidates turned to see the massive zero-pointer robot looming over them, causing panic among many. While most fled, Midoriya stood his ground, unaware that the tall boy and the invisible girl were watching him. Suddenly he heard a cry for help and turned to see a brunette girl trapped beneath rubble. Without a moment's hesitation, he dashed to her side, astonishing the onlookers. He asked if she was okay while removing the debris from her leg. She urged him to save himself, but he firmly refused, declaring that heroes do not abandon those in need. With determination, he used 35% of his quirk to lift the heavy rubble and tossed it aside. The crowd was in awe, especially the girl he had rescued. He carefully picked her up and carried her to safety before returning to face the zero-pointer. With a fierce yell, he charged his quirk and delivered a powerful punch, shattering the giant robot. The spectators were left speechless, including the other candidates and staff. As Midoriya landed, he felt pain in his swollen arm but pushed through, focusing on the girl he had saved. He knelt beside her, asking if she was all right. She admitted her leg hurt, and upon noticing his arm, her concern grew. He explained that his injuries were a result of using his quirk at full capacity, drawing the attention of his fellow students, particularly the tall boy and the invisible girl, who were astonished by his strength. Just then, Recovery Girl approached, ready to assess the injuries. Midoriya requested her assistance for the girl first, demonstrating his selflessness even in the face of his own pain. She first approached Midoriya and gently kissed his cheek to heal him. This surprised everyone present, but soon after, Midoriya's arm was restored. Recovery Girl quietly reminded him to be careful next time as he prepared to leave. Midoriya nodded in response, acknowledging her words as he walked away from the crowd. In the UA staff room, the faculty, particularly Aizawa and All Might, were impressed by Midoriya's actions and performance. Aizawa quickly expressed his desire to have Izuku Midoriya in his class, catching everyone off guard. Nizu granted the request with a smile. After the exam concluded, Midoriya made his way back to the orphanage, reflecting on his performance and whether he had passed. As he walked, he heard 3 voices behind him. Turning around, he saw Tsu and 2 others he recognized from the stadium. Tsu greeted him as she caught up with the group. Midoriya acknowledged Tsu and the others, who introduced themselves. One of them, a boy with black spiky hair and sharp teeth, confirmed Midoriya's name. He introduced himself as Eijiro Kirishima. The pink-skinned girl cheerfully introduced herself as Mina Ishido. Just then, someone tapped Midoriya on the shoulder, and he turned to see the girl who could turn invisible. She greeted him with a cute smile, and Midoriya recognized her. Ishido asked the girl about her quirk, and she confirmed that she could indeed turn invisible. She then named each of them, including Midoriya. They all confirmed their names in unison. Tsu introduced herself, asking to be called Tsu, and the invisible girl introduced herself as Toru Hagakure. Midoriya expressed his pleasure in meeting Tsu, Kirishima, Ishido, and Hagakure, shaking their hands. They all responded in kind, each using their own affectionate terms for him, which left Midoriya surprised, especially at Ishido and Hagakure's words. Hagakure then thanked Midoriya for something he had said earlier, which she found very kind. Midoriya realized what she meant, feeling glad that his words had made an impact. Suddenly, a brunette girl came running toward them, calling out to Midoriya. He recognized her and greeted her again. Kirishima asked if Midoriya knew her, and he nodded. The girl introduced herself as Achiko Uraraka, eager to get the introductions done before any interruptions. Midoriya introduced himself and pointed out his friends, offering a handshake which Uraraka accepted. They exchanged pleasantries, and Midoriya felt a sense of camaraderie. They decided to hang out together, which delighted Midoriya as it was his first time spending time with friends. They headed to the mall, where Midoriya admitted he had never been, having spent most of his time studying and caring for the children at the orphanage. The group decided to show him around. As they explored the mall, the girls suggested a fun idea. They wanted Midoriya to try on some clothes they picked out. Midoriya thought it would be a cool experience. However, as he tried on the outfits, most choices were fine, but Ishido's selections were quite questionable, leading him to settle on swim trunks. The girls blushed and stared at him, clearly flustered by his appearance. Hagakure then encouraged Midoriya to try on a cat costume inspired by Super Mario. Although he was about to protest, he noticed how adorable the girls thought he looked, leading them to hug him. Midoriya blushed deeply, feeling both embarrassed and flattered, while Kirishima struggled to contain his laughter and took a picture of the moment. Afterward, they headed to the arcade, where Midoriya surprised everyone by winning every game. He collected fantastic prizes, which he generously gave to his new friends. Kirishima was grateful for his gift, while the girls were overwhelmed with joy, their eyes sparkling with admiration for Midoriya. He gifted Kirishima a pair of limited edition boxing gloves from his favorite hero, Crimson Riot, which thrilled Kirishima, who had long sought after them. Midoriya also gave each of the girls a squishmallow, further solidifying their newfound friendship. For Uraraka, it was a machi dressed as the pro hero 13. For Tsu, it was a frog dressed as the pro hero Selkie. For Ishido, it was an alien from the movie Toy Story. For Hagakure, it was Leonari, the rainbow lion. The girls saw them as children that Midoriya had given them, and they were determined to protect them at all times. The group decided to grab a bite to eat. When their food arrived, they began to dig in. As they enjoyed their meal, they started to share more about themselves. Soon, the conversation shifted to Midoriya, as the girls were particularly interested in learning more about him. Initially, he was hesitant, but eventually he opened up and shared his story. Midoriya revealed details about himself, including his likes, activities, and hobbies. He mentioned that he helps at the orphanage but framed it as volunteering rather than revealing that he is an orphan himself. The girls were impressed by what Midoriya shared, and their interest in him grew with each passing moment. He even told them about his hero analysis, which piqued their curiosity. He pulled out his notebook, and they eagerly scanned through it. It was clear that they were impressed with Midoriya's notes, which surprised him since they didn't seem put off by his passion. Then Ishido had an idea. She asked to see Midoriya's phone, and he handed it over without hesitation. What Midoriya soon realized was that the girls were sharing their numbers with him. As they finished, Kirishima was about to ask for Midoriya's phone, but they returned it to him first. When Midoriya looked at his phone, he discovered that he had received not just one, but 5 girls' numbers. He stared at the screen in surprise until Kirishima tapped his shoulder, giving Midoriya his number before returning to his meal. Later, the 5 girls became Midoriya's friends, a development he had never anticipated. As the gang went their separate ways, they agreed to keep in touch and hoped they would all be accepted to UA. When Midoriya returned to the orphanage, Torvald and Sakura were waiting for him, asking where he had been and why he took so long. Midoriya recalled the day he had spent with his new friends while checking on the kids. A smile spread across his face as he responded, sharing that he had been hanging out with friends and having fun, completely unfazed by their questions. This reaction surprised them both, and they fell silent as he took care of the children. After the kids went to bed, Midoriya retreated to his room in the attic. After taking care of his nightly routine, he lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling for a while. He then checked his phone and saw messages from his friends discussing their hangout and the great time they had together. Midoriya smiled as he read their messages and shared his thoughts about the day. After a while, he texted them back with a simple, "Good night." He drifted off to sleep with a smile, feeling as though his life had turned around. On the first day at UA, Midoriya was getting ready, having prepared breakfast for the kids and Torvald and Sakura. The usual breakfast chaos ensued, but Midoriya had secretly made breakfast for the kids. Afterward, he instructed them to hide from Torvald and Sakura while he was gone. As Midoriya headed to UA, he pulled out his phone to check the group chat. He saw all the messages from Kirishima, Ashido, Hagakure, Tsu, and Uraraka. They had been hanging out more often since the entrance exam. With Kirishima, they had become best friends, often training together at the gym. Midoriya also spent time with the girls, either as a group or in pairs. They were getting to know him better and had even admitted to having crushes on him. Ashido and Hagakure had tried to flirt with him, but he remained blissfully unaware of their intentions. He was also part of a group chat that included just him and the girls. Excited to have finally made friends, Midoriya felt a rush of anticipation as he approached UA. Now, he had people waiting for him, making him eager to experience school for the first time. Upon arriving at UA, Midoriya walked through the hallways, trying to find his classroom. He felt a bit lost when a girl approached him, asking if he was okay and if he was lost. When Midoriya looked at her, he noticed she appeared slightly older than him, with a fair complexion and long, periwinkle hair that reached her knees. Her blue eyes sparkled with curiosity, and she wore a warm smile. Midoriya found himself captivated by her beauty, unintentionally voicing his thoughts aloud. The girl blushed at his comment, but before she could respond, another voice interrupted them. A boy approached, calling out to the girl named Nijire, mentioning that he and another friend had been looking for her. The timid boy behind him asked if she was bothering Midoriya. Midoriya quickly pieced together that the girl's full name was Nijire Hado. The first boy had a tall, muscular build, blonde hair, and a friendly demeanor, while the other boy appeared shy and introverted, with pale skin and pointed ears. Midoriya felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he stood there, ready to embark on his new journey at UA. He thought to himself that the shy guy wasn't much of a talker, and he felt a pang of empathy, recalling his own struggles with anxiety. The shy guy noticed the gaze and quickly turned away, uncomfortable with the attention. The blonde guy, Mirio, encouraged him not to let his nervousness get the best of him. Taiki, the shy guy, expressed his desire to go home, his voice barely above a whisper. Mirio chuckled lightly before turning to Midoriya, who was observing them with interest. Mirio introduced himself with a flourish, placing his hand on his chest, and then pointed to Tamaki, introducing him as well. He gestured to Nijire, who had been watching closely. Nijire introduced herself with a bright smile, leaning in a bit too close for comfort, but Midoriya took it in stride, thinking she was just friendly. This interaction caught Mirio and Tamaki off guard, especially since Midoriya didn't seem fazed by Nijire's antics. It reminded Midoriya of the kids he cared for, who often acted in similar ways. Midoriya introduced himself, admitting he was lost and asking for directions to Class 1. Nijire eagerly offered to guide him, pulling him away from Mirio and Tamaki, who were left puzzled by the sudden turn of events. As they walked, Nijire bombarded Midoriya with questions, and to her surprise, he answered them all. This sparked her interest in him, and she began to develop feelings, having had little luck in her love life before. To Midoriya, it felt like an instant connection. When they arrived at Class 1A, Midoriya felt a wave of nerves wash over him as he stared at the large door. He turned to Nijire, thanking her for her help. She blushed and insisted he call her by her first name. Midoriya nodded, acknowledging her request, and prepared to enter the classroom, hoping he wouldn't be late. Before he could step inside, Nijire called out to him, asking to see his phone. He handed it over, and she quickly added her number before he walked away. With a cute smile and a wink, she bid him farewell, leaving him feeling pleased to have made new friends. As Midoriya entered the classroom, he hoped he wouldn't run into Bakugo or the guy with glasses. Unfortunately, his hopes were dashed when he found them already arguing. The guy with glasses was chastising Bakugo for putting his feet on the desk, while Bakugo shot back with a snarky remark. The guy with glasses, Tenya Ida, expressed his disbelief at Bakugo's attitude and introduced himself, trying to maintain composure. Bakugo, noticing Midoriya at the door, paused mid-sentence. Ida followed Bakugo's gaze and recognized Midoriya from the entrance exam. Midoriya thought to himself that this was just his luck. Ida approached him, attempting to introduce himself, but Midoriya interrupted, acknowledging that he already knew his name. Ida then bowed, apologizing for his earlier rudeness during the exams. He expressed admiration for Midoriya's actions in saving the girls during the test, recognizing the seriousness with which he approached hero work. Midoriya, taken aback by the apology, reassured Ida that he didn't see himself as superior and suggested they start over as friends. Ida agreed, shaking Midoriya's hand with a chuckle. Just then, Midoriya heard a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see Tsu, his classmate, at the door. He greeted her with a smile, pleased to see a friendly face. Tsu reminded him to call her by her nickname, pouting playfully at his slip-up. Before Midoriya could respond, he was suddenly enveloped in two hugs that squeezed him tightly, feeling as if he were surrounded by marshmallows. He looked on both sides to see Ishido and Hagakure hugging him. Both girls greeted Midoriya with cheerful compliments, surprising the nearby students, but Midoriya remained oblivious to the attention. He happily acknowledged them, expressing his delight at seeing his classmates from Class A. Meanwhile, a few students nearby wondered how he could be so unaware of the situation. As Ishido and Hagakure released their embrace, Tsu felt a twinge of jealousy, while Ida was taken aback, and Bakugo's reaction was one of disbelief. Hagakure expressed her happiness that Midoriya had made it into the hero course, but her smile faded slightly as she asked why he hadn't informed them of his success. Midoriya scratched the back of his head, admitting he had been too busy to send a message, mainly due to his responsibilities at the orphanage. Ishido reassured him that it was fine, playfully reminding him to keep them in the loop next time. Just then, Uraraka approached, confirming that Midoriya had indeed passed the exam. She complimented him on his impressive performance during the second part of the exam, mimicking his punch, which only fueled the jealousy of the three girls. Midoriya thanked her with a smile, feeling grateful for her praise. The buzz among the students intensified as they discussed the contestant who had taken down the zero-pointer robot with a single punch. Kirishima, along with two other students, confirmed that Midoriya was that contestant, leaving everyone astonished at the strength of someone who appeared so ordinary. This revelation caught the attention of 6 students. The first was a tall girl with long black hair and sharp dark eyes, usually styled in a spiky ponytail. The second was a medium-height girl with lazy-looking black eyes and short, dark purple hair, notable for her earphone jacks. The third was a young woman of average height with straight, light brown hair and large dark brown eyes. The fourth had bright blue eyes and ash blonde hair styled in bushy pigtails. The fifth was a male student with striking hair, half white and half red, and a noticeable scar over his left eye. Lastly, Bakugo stood among them, skeptical and convinced that Midoriya must have cheated his way through the exam, unaware of the intense training he had undergone. While the other students dismissed Midoriya's achievements as exaggerated rumors, one student observed him closely, feeling a strange familiarity but unable to place it. Suddenly, they all heard a voice from the entrance, where a disheveled man resembling a caterpillar stood. He announced that he was their homeroom teacher for the next 4 years, introducing himself as Shota Aizawa. The students were left questioning their new teacher as he pulled out uniforms from his sleeping bag, instructing them to change and meet him outside. Once at the UA grounds, the students changed and gathered, anxious about the upcoming quirk test. Mr. Aizawa explained that these tests would showcase their potential. Uraraka raised her hand, inquiring if they would miss the orientation. Aizawa, in a tired tone, dismissed her concern and called on Bakugo to share his ball throw average from high school. Bakugo responded confidently, and Aizawa tossed him a ball, instructing him to use his quirk. Bakugo unleashed a powerful explosion as he threw the ball, leaving everyone in awe of his strength. Aizawa revealed the impressive distance of 705.2 meters, prompting Kirishima to express his admiration. As the excitement grew, a yellow-haired boy lamented his lack of throwing skills, while Ishido eagerly anticipated using her quirk. However, Aizawa's next words shocked the students. The student with the lowest score would be expelled. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. Some students protested, but Aizawa smirked, asserting his authority over the class and reminding them that teachers had the freedom to run their classes as they saw fit. That includes who stays. Uraraka frowned, feeling it was unfair to make such decisions on their first day, hoping their homeroom teacher would reconsider. A student nearby expressed irritation at the situation, drawing everyone's attention to a scowling ash-blonde girl with wavy hair styled in bushy pigtails. Her bright blue eyes sparkled with intensity as she spoke passionately about the unfairness of life. She pointed out the harsh realities of the world, emphasizing that if they wanted to be heroes, they needed to accept the challenges that came with it. Aizawa thought to himself that he might have found his favorite student in and Takamaki, who understood that life wasn't fair, particularly due to her own experiences. He then addressed the rest of the class, reminding them that if they wanted to become professionals, they would have to earn it. The first test was the 50-meter dash. When it was Midoriya's turn, he noticed that his opponent was Bakugo, but he didn't let that intimidate him. At the signal, Bakugo launched forward with explosive speed, believing he had left Midoriya behind. However, in a surprising twist, Midoriya appeared right beside him, moving with incredible speed and leaving Bakugo in his wake. Bakugo finished in 4.13 seconds, while Midoriya clocked an impressive 2.51 seconds, leaving everyone in shock. Bakugo's eyes widened in disbelief. He had lost to Midoriya, someone he considered weak, and he couldn't comprehend how it had happened. Mr. Aizawa, however, was not entirely impressed, recognizing that while 2.51 seconds was notable, it didn't reflect Midoriya's full potential. Next was the grip strength test. Midoriya understood that this measured raw power, and although he had been training with One for All, he didn't want to damage the equipment. He decided to use only 20% of his power. As he gripped the device, it beeped, registering 1,900 kilograms. The students were in awe of his strength, and even a classmate with multiple arms gripping the machine was taken aback. Bakugo was once again shocked to realize he had lost to Midoriya. The third test was the standing long jump. Midoriya soared through the air, landing with such distance that the others began to reconsider their initial judgments of him. Mr. Aizawa felt irritation growing as he noted that Midoriya still hadn't gone all out. In the fourth test, sidestepping, a boy with ball on his head nearly claimed first place, but Midoriya outperformed him by a large margin, moving so quickly that it appeared as if there were multiple versions of him. The students were increasingly impressed, but Mr. Aizawa remained aware of the reality. The final test was the ball throw. Midoriya stepped up, planted his foot in the sand, and launched the ball with tremendous force, creating a shockwave and a gust of wind. The ball flew an astonishing 700.5 meters, leaving everyone speechless and Bakugo seething with frustration. Before Bakugo could react further, Mr. Aizawa swiftly used his scarf to restrain Midoriya's arm. Midoriya, quick on his feet, raised his arm just in time to avoid being caught completely off guard. Aizawa was impressed by his reflexes but quickly moved on. Midoriya, still processing what had just happened, asked Aizawa if that was part of the test. Aizawa, stopping before him, questioned whether Midoriya thought he was foolish. Midoriya, taken aback, stammered in disbelief. Aizawa then pointed out that Midoriya had not been giving his all, shocking everyone, especially Bakugo. The realization that Midoriya had been holding back left the students horrified at what his scores could have been if he had fully unleashed his quirk. Midoriya attempted to explain himself, but Aizawa interrupted, tightening his grip and activating his quirk, his eyes glowing red as his scarf floated around him. He confronted Midoriya, making it clear that he had erased his quirk because he could tell he was not performing to his full potential. Midoriya suddenly recognized Aizawa from his distinctive goggles and realized he was the Erasure hero, Erasure Head. The students began to murmur among themselves, curious about who Aizawa was. Midoriya noted Aizawa's aversion to media appearances, which explained the lack of information about him, surprising both his classmates and Aizawa himself. Aizawa acknowledged that while it was a bit unsettling, it was good that Midoriya had done his research. He reiterated that he had turned off Midoriya's quirk because he was clearly holding back. Midoriya, eager to defend himself, was cut off again by Aizawa, who firmly stated that he expected Midoriya to give his all in the next attempt. He warned that if Midoriya held back again, he would face immediate expulsion. With that, Midoriya returned to the starting line, determined to unleash his full potential. The other students watched in anticipation as Midoriya concentrated, channeling nearly 50% of his quirk, creating a powerful wind pressure that left everyone in awe of his capabilities. Even the 6 students, including Bakugo, were astonished to discover that this was Midoriya's full power. As he prepared to throw the ball, he focused 100% of his quirk on his index finger. The moment he released the ball, it generated a massive wave of wind pressure that pushed the students back, causing some to struggle to maintain their balance. The ground shook, and the entire school felt the tremor. During the orientation, every first-year student sensed the rumble and fought to stay upright. They even questioned the teachers about the possibility of an earthquake. However, only Principal Nizu and a few students were aware of the truth. Nizu, with a big smile, reassured everyone, declaring that it was not an earthquake but a first-year student in Class 1A demonstrating his full power. The revelation that a first-year student possessed such strength left everyone in disbelief. Present Mike, trying to keep his balance, hurried over to Nizu, eager to know who this impressive student was. Nizu proudly announced that it was Izuku Midoriya, filling the crowd with hope for the future. This news shocked everyone, including Nito Monoma from Class 1B, who felt a mix of irritation and disbelief at Midoriya's abilities. On this day, every student learned the name Izuku Midoriya, a name that would soon become well known throughout the superhuman world. After the excitement settled, the students turned their attention back to Midoriya. As the dust cleared, he was seen holding his right wrist, his index finger slightly trembling and tinged with purple. Mr. Aizawa was about to announce the scores when Midoriya raised his left hand, still focused on the ground. Confusion swept through the crowd as they heard a sound resembling a jet fighter. Suddenly, something on fire hurtled toward them. Midoriya leaped up, catching it with his right hand before landing back on the ground, striking a heroic pose. He stood tall, looking at Mr. Aizawa with determination, the flaming ball still in his grasp. With the ball still burning, Midoriya crushed it, extinguishing the flames and reducing it to ashes. Unbeknownst to most, All Might was observing from behind a wall, astonished by Midoriya's display of power. He was impressed by the boy's growth and the effectiveness of his training. All Might marveled at how Midoriya seemed to match his own strength from his prime, reflecting on the legacy of his quirk. Mr. Aizawa smiled as he regarded Midoriya, who had just showcased incredible raw power. When he revealed Midoriya's score of 40,075,000 meters, shock rippled through the crowd. For Bakugo, this was the final straw. He charged at Midoriya, furious and demanding to know how he achieved such a feat. As Bakugo rushed forward, he was suddenly ensnared by Mr. Aizawa's capture scarf. Struggling against the restraints, Bakugo expressed his frustration, but it was futile. Aizawa explained the nature of his capture weapon, warning Bakugo that losing his temper could lead to expulsion. Midoriya returned to his classmates, who praised him for his impressive performance. Aizawa eventually released Bakugo, who glared at Midoriya, feeling overshadowed by his classmates' success. The revelation that Mr. Aizawa had fabricated the threat of expulsion surprised many students, though some were already aware of the truth. Among them were Takamaki and Momo Yaoyorozu, who understood the underlying lesson. After class, the students followed Mr. Aizawa to the UA dorms, where they were greeted by Nizu, Present Mike, and Midnight. They explained that classes A and B would share the same building due to budget constraints. The students were informed that they would need parental signatures to confirm their approval for living on campus. While everyone else was confident they could obtain the signatures, Midoriya felt a twinge of sadness at the thought of not joining his classmates in the dorms. He was apprehensive about leaving the children at the orphanage, where he felt the caretakers were inadequate. Midoriya was also uncomfortable discussing his status as an orphan, knowing that if the caretakers were approached, they would likely refuse to support his move to the dorms. He feared they would prioritize financial gain over the well-being of the children, potentially placing him in an even worse situation. So he was going to keep quiet about this. When the students returned to the classroom, Mr. Aizawa had everyone introduce themselves. He tiredly instructed them to introduce themselves without waking him up and mentioned that they could share their quirks if they wished. He then returned to his yellow sleeping bag, leaving the students to stare at their teacher's antics with deadpan expressions. Ida suggested that they follow the seating arrangements to ensure a smooth process. Each student began to introduce themselves in turn. Aoyama went first, introducing himself as Yuga Aoyama. He expressed his love for things that sparkle and his dislike for things that do not. He shared that his quirk, navel laser, allowed him to fire a powerful laser beam from his belly button, although using it too much caused him discomfort. Next was Ishido, who introduced herself as Mina Ishido. She shared her interests in dancing, reptiles, and fashion, while stating her strong dislike for bullies. Her quirk, acid, enabled her to create acid from her hands, which she could use to attack or make surfaces slippery. Tsu Azui, known as Tsu, introduced herself next. She liked frogs, her family, and friends, and had a strong aversion to bullies. Her quirk, frog, allowed her to mimic any frog's abilities, including a tongue that could stretch 20 meters and hands and feet that could stick to walls. Ida introduced himself as Tenya Ida, expressing his love for his family and his desire to maintain order. He disliked those who broke the rules. His quirk, engine, equipped him with mechanical devices in his legs that enhanced his speed and attack power. Uraraka introduced herself as Achiko Uraraka, sharing her fondness for her parents, Machi, and friends, while disliking those who made fun of her family. Her quirk, zero gravity, allowed her to make objects weightless by touching them with all 5 fingers, though using it on herself for too long made her feel unwell. Ojiro introduced himself as Mashiro Ojiro, mentioning his love for martial arts and training. He disliked when people mocked his tail. His quirk, tail, enabled him to use his tail for striking enemies or climbing for better mobility. Kaminari introduced himself as Denki Kaminari, sharing his interests in hanging out with friends, playing video games, and dueling. He admitted to disliking studying. His quirk, electrification, allowed him to gather electricity in his body and discharge it, though overdoing it could briefly affect his brain. Kirishima introduced himself as Ijiro Kirishima, expressing his love for manly things and his dislike for anything unmanly. His quirk, hardening, allowed him to harden his body into a rugged form with sharp edges, making it effective for both offense and defense. Koda introduced himself as Koji Koda, sharing his love for animals and his fear of bugs. He was nervous and chose to write his introduction on the board. His quirk, Ani voice, allowed him to control animals with his voice. Sato introduced himself as Rikido Sato, sharing his love for sweets and baking. He didn't have many dislikes but mentioned that his quirk, Sugar Rush, made him 5 times stronger for a short PRD after consuming sugar. Shoji introduced himself as Mizo Shoji. He enjoyed quiet and meditation and disliked loud people. His quirk, Dupli Arms, allowed him to duplicate body parts from his shoulders to enhance his attack abilities. Jiro introduced herself as Kyoka Jiro, sharing her love for music and instruments while expressing her dislike for rude people. Her quirk, Earphone Jack, enabled her to eavesdrop by connecting plugs at the ends of her ears to walls, which also heightened her hearing. Siro introduced himself as Hanta Siro, mentioning his enjoyment of helping at his dad's office and playing video games. He expressed a strong dislike for spiders due to a past experience. His quirk, Tape, allowed him to launch tape from his elbows to catch enemies. Tokoyami introduced himself as Fumikage Tokoyami, sharing his love for birds and quiet places while disliking loud people. His quirk, Dark Shadow, manifested as a shadowy beast that grew stronger in the dark but weakened in light. Dark Shadow introduced itself, surprising everyone with its ability to communicate. Todoroki introduced himself simply as Shoto Todoroki and quickly returned to his desk, leaving the others to think that his introduction was rather brief. Hagakure introduced herself as Toru Hagakure, sharing her love for girly things and her best friend while expressing her dislike for people who made fun of others. Her quirk, Invisibility, allowed her to turn invisible while her clothes remained visible, which she demonstrated. Bakugo introduced himself as Katsuki Bakugo, declaring his intent to become the #1 hero and dismissing the others as extras. Midoriya introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya, sharing his interests in comic books, superheroes, and various media. He revealed that his quirk, superpower, could enhance his strength and speed. He also mentioned that doctors theorized he might possess multiple quirks, leaving everyone in shock. Mineta introduced himself as Minori Mineta. The things he liked were girls, and what he disliked was not being around them. His quirk was called Pop-Off. He could pick sticky ball off his head and stick them onto anything. They didn't adhere to him, allowing him to bounce off or climb on them. He introduced himself, trying to appear cool, but it didn't quite work. Everyone thought it was an interesting quirk, but they were also puzzled by his initial statement. Momo introduced herself next, stating her name and sharing her interests in reading, dueling, and studying. She expressed her disdain for perverts and those who tried to use her. Her quirk, creation, allowed her to create any non-living thing as long as she knew the object's molecular structure. She presented herself with a professional demeanor. Cammy then introduced herself with enthusiasm, sharing her excitement about collaborating with everyone. She mentioned her attraction to those who were good with kids and her dislike for rude people. Her quirk, glamour, enabled her to create visual and sound illusions for a short time. Her trendy language left most of the students confused, with only one understanding her. Midoriya, taking notes in his Hero Analysis for the Future notebook, asked Cammy if her quirk allowed her to create illusions of nature or other people, complete with voices. She confirmed his understanding with enthusiasm. The others were surprised that Midoriya had comprehended her, and introduced herself, expressing her desire to help those in need and her ability to judge character well. She stated her dislike for those she deemed scum but chose not to discuss her quirk. As she spoke, some guys began to take notice of her. Aizawa then announced that they were dismissed early, as the day was meant for orientation. The students, feeling a bit disappointed, realized they hadn't even attended it. After the introductions, the students returned home, but Midoriya headed back to the orphanage. Lost in thought about the dormitory situation, he didn't notice his surroundings until someone stopped him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Turning around, he saw Ida behind him. Ida greeted Midoriya and remarked on the interesting start to their time at UA. He then asked if Midoriya was heading to the train station. Midoriya confirmed that he was indeed going there. Ida asked if he could join, and Midoriya nodded in agreement. Ida bowed slightly, acknowledging Midoriya's superiority. Just then, Uraraka called out to Midoriya, waving as she approached with Tsu, Ashido, Hagakure, Kirishima, and 3 new faces. Midoriya greeted them and recognized the newcomers from class. He recalled their names: Kyoka Jiro, Denki Kaminari, and Kami Atsushimi. He extended his hand to them, pleased to meet them. Jiro acknowledged him, and Kaminari and Kami nodded in agreement. Kami expressed that they could just call her by her first name, which made Midoriya a bit flustered but happy. The girls, including Jiro, felt a pang of jealousy. Kirishima and Kaminari exchanged thoughts, wondering if Midoriya was oblivious to the situation. Jiro felt an unexpected anger at the thought, questioning her own feelings. Kaminari shifted the conversation, asking if they could walk home together. Ida agreed, adjusting his glasses. Hagakure praised Midoriya for his performance during the tests, and the others chimed in with their admiration. Kirishima declared Midoriya's actions as manly, while Jiro smiled, twirling one of her earplugs. Tsu noted that Midoriya's display reminded her of All Might, surprising him. Uraraka excitedly praised Midoriya's punch, which startled him since she called him Deku. When he expressed his surprise, she clarified that it was a name Bakugo had used during the test. She then asked why Bakugo called him that. Midoriya explained that Bakugo used it as an insult, meaning defenseless Izuku. This revelation shocked everyone, especially the girls. Ida commented on Bakugo's lack of sportsmanship, and the others agreed. Kami expressed her disapproval of Bakugo's behavior, and Uraraka quickly apologized to Midoriya, not wanting to hurt his feelings. She reflected on the name and suggested that Deku could be seen as encouraging, giving a sense of determination, and even thought it sounded cute. Hearing this perspective on the name was astounding for Midoriya. While it had once been used to mock him, Uraraka's interpretation gave it a new, uplifting meaning. Midoriya smiled proudly at Achiko, catching her off guard when he suggested she call him Deku. Ida was shocked, expressing disbelief that Midoriya was okay with this nickname, especially since he had previously mentioned it was an insult. Jiro felt a twinge of irritation when she heard Midoriya address Uraraka by her first name, questioning why it bothered her. The girls began to feel a pang of jealousy at this newfound familiarity. Even Cammy felt envious, wondering why it affected her so much. Midoriya quickly realized the situation when he noticed everyone nodding in agreement, except for a blushing Uraraka. He stammered an apology, but Uraraka reassured him that she didn't mind being called by her first name since he was using Deku. Midoriya, encouraged by her response, called her Achiko with a bright smile, which made her blush even more. This only fueled the jealousy among the other girls, except for Tsuyu, who was already accustomed to being called by her first name. Ashido and Hagakure eagerly asked Midoriya if he could call them by their first names too, wanting to be included. Jiro, blushing slightly, also expressed her interest in being called by her first name. Cammy reminded him not to forget her, urging him to use her first name as well. Just then, Takamaki approached, interrupting the conversation. She asked Midoriya to call her and noted that he looked familiar to her. Although she was hesitant to approach the other students due to her past, something about Midoriya intrigued her, and she wanted to know him better, and hoped he wouldn't see her as strange for saying this. Midoriya, with his signature smile, reassured her that it was fine and that he understood her feelings. He then proposed a hangout, which everyone enthusiastically agreed to, and, initially skeptical, was persuaded to join them, and they all set off from UA to spend time together. For Midoriya, his first day at UA was turning out to be beyond his expectations. Unbeknownst to them, All Might observed from a distance, deep in thought. He concluded that Midoriya possessed the quirk one for all, realizing it was not lost after all. The next day at UA, as Midoriya walked to class, he noticed students buzzing about him. Initially concerned he had done something wrong, he soon learned they were discussing his quirk and how he had made the whole school shake. Interestingly, no one knew what he looked like. Some imagined him as intimidating, while others thought he might look down on them. The girls, however, assumed he must be handsome, which surprised him. Those who had met him knew better, but they all shared one sentiment: they praised him for aspiring to be a great hero, which made Midoriya happy as he continued to class. In Class 1A, the students waited for their teacher. Midoriya was the only one who knew who would be teaching them, as he recognized the voice of All Might. He burst through the doors in a dramatic pose, shocking the students with his presence as their teacher for Hero Basics. Cammy exclaimed in surprise at All Might's arrival, while Kaminari and Kirishima expressed their excitement, with Kirishima raising his fists in enthusiasm. Tsuyu pointed out All Might's Silver Age costume, and Ojiro commented on the thrill it gave him. All Might welcomed everyone to the most essential class at UA, where they would learn the fundamentals of being a hero and how to fight for justice. He announced that the day's lesson would be combat training, pulling out a card labeled Combat Training to show the class. Bakugo and Midoriya exchanged knowing glances at the mention of combat, and All Might emphasized the importance of this aspect of heroism. He pointed to a wall where suitcases with numbers emerged, explaining that their costumes were made based on their quirk records and requests from before the school year. He instructed everyone to get dressed and meet him at ground beta. The students eagerly complied, but confusion arose when they noticed Midoriya hadn't picked up a suitcase. His slot number was empty, leaving everyone wondering where his costume was. At ground beta, All Might stood ready as he heard footsteps echoing from the tunnel. Midoriya emerged in his homemade hero costume, which featured an old All Might hoodie, green long johns, a red belt, white gloves, black elbow and knee pads, and red shoes. His mask resembled his previous costume but included a respirator, adding a unique touch to his appearance. If one were to look it up, they would see a striking figure dressed in a unique hero costume, complete with black goggles reminiscent of Tom Holland's homemade Spider-Man outfit. Midoriya glanced around the area, noting the absence of other students, and remarked to All Might that he thought some would have arrived by now. All Might, observing Midoriya's eagerness, reflected on the fact that he had left in quite a hurry. Clearing his throat, All Might addressed Midoriya, commenting on the interesting nature of his hero costume, trying to be gentle with his words. Midoriya awkwardly admitted that he had forgotten to submit his sketches for his costume, leading to a last-minute creation. He looked to All Might, hopeful that it would suffice. All Might reassured him that it was indeed better than nothing, and if he were honest, he thought Midoriya looked great in it. Feeling grateful for the encouragement, Midoriya was about to respond when the sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnel. The rest of the students emerged, and All Might enthusiastically declared that their costumes were a testament to their identities as heroes in training. He praised their appearances and urged them to take their roles seriously. Midoriya was captivated by the variety of costumes and almost pulled out his notebook for hero analysis when he noticed Uraraka approaching him. She greeted him with excitement, complimenting his hero costume and noting how cool it looked on him, likening him to a famous comic hero. Midoriya expressed his gratitude for her kind words. Uraraka, feeling a bit self-conscious, mentioned that her bodysuit was quite tight. Midoriya, appreciating her appearance, thought to himself how lovely she looked in her outfit. Uraraka, however, felt embarrassed and doubted her own appearance. Midoriya quickly reassured her, insisting that she looked fantastic and adorable, unaware of the impact his words had on her, which caused her to blush. Jiro joined the conversation, teasing Midoriya for his bold compliment to Uraraka, making him realize the effect of his words. Before he could respond, Uraraka expressed her gratitude, still blushing but pleased. Ashido then playfully asked Midoriya how she looked in her hero outfit, leaning in flirtatiously. Just then Midoriya felt a tap on his shoulder, and when he turned, he was momentarily blinded by something covering his eyes. He guessed it was Hagakure and confirmed his suspicion when she giggled and revealed herself. Midoriya admired her hero suit, which was a skin-tight bodysuit in a lighter blue with pink lines and goggles that suited her well. His compliment made her blush, stirring a mix of feelings among the other girls present. Hagakure excitedly explained the special features of her goggles, which included night vision and the ability to become invisible, impressing everyone, including Midoriya. Ashido and Tsu then chimed in, asking Midoriya for his thoughts on their hero outfits. He complimented them, making them blush with delight. Before Jiro could speak up, Kami surprised everyone by putting her arm around her, including and in the gesture. Kami asked Midoriya what he thought of their hero outfits, and he responded positively, noting the coolness of Kami's and Jiro's costumes. However, he was puzzled by An's choice to wear her PE clothes for the practice, and explained that her hero costume wasn't ready yet, which she said with a hint of embarrassment. Midoriya sensed there was more to her story but chose not to press her further. All Might then called for everyone's attention, announcing that it was time to prepare for combat training. A student in armor raised his hand, and Midoriya recognized it was Ida, who explained that they were in the simulated city from their entrance exam. "Does that mean we'll undergo urban training again?" he asked. All Might responded with enthusiasm, raising both fingers. "No, we are going to take 2 steps forward. Most battles with villains reported in the news occur outdoors. However, the most dangerous villains operate indoors. Consider illegal businesses, prisons, and false imprisonment. Smarter villains lurk in the shadows." The next day, Midoriya arrived at UA after helping the children at the orphanage and dealing with a troublesome couple. As he approached the entrance, he noticed a group of reporters blocking his path. He thought to himself that they must have discovered All Might was working at UA as a teacher. The press sometimes frightened him. As Midoriya attempted to walk through the gate, reporters suddenly bombarded him with questions about his experiences with All Might. He knew he had to ignore them and push through. However, one reporter grabbed him by the arm, asking him to wait a moment for a few questions. Midoriya politely declined, explaining that he was late for class and didn't have time. Realizing he wouldn't be bothered any longer, he continued to the classroom. Just as he sat down at his desk, Mr. Aizawa entered. He addressed the class, expressing hope that they had rested from the combat training and that he had taken the opportunity to evaluate their results. Aizawa then fixed an unfriendly gaze on Bakugo, reminding him of his potential but emphasizing the need for maturity. He warned Bakugo that if he caused another incident, he would face expulsion, highlighting the seriousness of his actions and the consequences they could have had. Bakugo turned his head in silence, clearly irritated. Aizawa then turned his attention to Midoriya, advising him to refrain from reckless actions in the future. While it was commendable to stand up for friends, he urged Midoriya to be more careful and avoid seriously hurting classmates. Midoriya nodded, feeling a bit sad as some students suppressed their laughter, and Bakugo remained annoyed by the aftermath of their last encounter. Aizawa then announced that they had a special task, which caused concern among the students. They would need to choose a representative. Kirishima eagerly volunteered, followed by several others raising their hands to express interest. Midoriya observed the excitement and wondered if it was a good thing for him. Ida called for silence, explaining that a representative must lead and earn the trust of their classmates. He proposed a democratic process for selecting the representative, raising his hand to emphasize his point. Midoriya scratched his head in confusion at Ida's suggestion. Kaminari questioned the feasibility of the idea, while Tsuyu pointed out that they had only known each other for a short time, making it difficult to determine trustworthiness. Kirishima noted that many might vote for themselves. Ida insisted that the one with the most votes would be the best fit for the role. Aizawa, tired and ready for a nap, gave them the freedom to proceed as they wished. Yaoyorozu took charge, producing a box for the voting process and instructing everyone to write down their choices. Jiro asked where she had obtained the papers, and Yaoyorozu explained that one must always be prepared. As the students voted, Yaoyorozu contemplated her choice, recalling Midoriya's impressive actions during their training. A slight blush crept onto her cheeks as she remembered how he had helped her and the group. Ultimately, she made her decision. When the results were announced, Midoriya was shocked to find he had received 9 votes, while Yaoyorozu received 7. Bakugo erupted in frustration, demanding to know who had voted for Midoriya. Amidst the chaos, Ida sat in disbelief, having received no votes. He lamented his situation, realizing he could not contest the system he had proposed. Yaoyorozu inquired if he had voted for someone else, while Sato questioned his decision-making. After the results were revealed, Midoriya and Yaoyorozu stood together in front of the class. Aizawa monotonously declared Midoriya as the representative, with Yaoyorozu as his deputy. Midoriya sighed, committing to do his best, while Yaoyorozu expressed her support, feeling pleased to partner with him again. At lunchtime, Midoriya sat with Uraraka, Ashido, Hagakure, and Ida. He sighed, staring at his food, prompting Ida to ask if he was troubled. Midoriya expressed his confusion about how he had been chosen as the representative. Could it have been Yaoyorozu? Ida smiled and expressed confidence that Midoriya would make a great class president. Midoriya was shocked to learn that Ida had voted for him. Uraraka chimed in, revealing that she had voted for him as well. Ashido and Hagakure joined in, expressing their support, while Yaoyorozu confirmed her vote for Midoriya too. The 5 of them turned to see Yaoyorozu with her plate of food and welcomed her to join them. Ida inquired if Yaoyorozu had indeed voted for Midoriya, to which she replied affirmatively, citing his performance in combat training as a reason for her choice. Ida echoed her sentiment, explaining that Midoriya's courage and quick thinking made him a leader worth following. Midoriya was surprised to learn that Ida had voted for him as well. Uraraka, curious about Ida's background, asked if he was wealthy. Ida hesitated but admitted that he was concerned about how others might perceive him due to his family's history. He revealed that his family had been heroes for generations and that he was the youngest son of the Ida family, with his older brother being the renowned hero Ingenium. Midoriya admired Ingenium and recognized the pressure Ida felt to live up to his brother's legacy. Uraraka noted that it was the first time she had seen Ida smile, prompting Ashido and Hagakure to encourage him to smile more often. Midoriya reflected on the similarities between his admiration for All Might and Ida's for Ingenium, assuring Ida that he would become a great hero like his brother. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the cafeteria, announcing a Level 3 security breach. Students began to panic and evacuate the building in a chaotic rush. Midoriya and his friends found themselves caught in the frenzy, with Midoriya accidentally hitting his face against a window. Ida, amidst the chaos, praised everyone's quick reactions, As Midoriya looked outside, he realized that the press was causing the commotion, trying to get to All Might. Present Mike and Aizawa were attempting to manage the situation, warning the reporters to leave. Midoriya understood that he needed to calm everyone down. He thought about what All Might would do and came up with a plan. He called out to Uraraka, asking her to make him float. She managed to activate her quirk, and with Ida's help, Midoriya was propelled toward the door. Once on his feet, he shouted for everyone to calm down, explaining that it was just the press. However, his voice was drowned out by the chaos. Frustrated by the situation, Midoriya noticed some of his classmates struggling to escape the crowd. Seeing two female students in distress ignited a surge of determination within him. To get everyone's attention, he slammed his arm against the wall, ready to take charge and restore order. It worked. Everyone stopped and turned to look at Midoriya, who wore an angry expression. He urged everyone to calm down, explaining that the chaos was caused by the press outside and that the teachers had everything under control. He reminded his classmates that they were UA students and needed to act like heroes, emphasizing the importance of common sense. Midoriya felt a rush of emotion, unsure of what had come over him. As the students quieted down and sighed with relief upon hearing the police sirens, he descended and walked toward his friends. When he reached them, he noticed that Ida, Uraraka, Ashido, Hagakure, and Yaoyorozu were pleased with how he managed the situation. Before they could speak, he quickly left to check on two female students. Upon arrival, he noticed one girl looking worried. She was short with a round face and a brief equine muzzle, framed by thick, wavy blonde hair that cascaded halfway down her back. Her large, round eyes were a striking Prussian blue, and she sported tall, lyre-shaped pale tan horns on her head. The other girl, who had fainted, was also short with a thin build, honey-brown hair styled in a mushroom-shaped bob, and a long fringe covering her eyes. Midoriya stopped in front of them and asked if the fainted girl was okay. The blonde girl stammered that she wasn't and explained that someone had accidentally hit her while they were trying to pass through the crowd. Midoriya decided to carry the girl in his arms to Recovery Girl's office. Ida, Uraraka, Ashido, Hagakure, and Yaoyorozu quickly approached him. He explained that a student had injured her, causing her to lose consciousness, and that he was taking her to Recovery Girl. Ida expressed disbelief at the actions of the other student, while Uraraka voiced her concern for the injured girl. Ashido added her frustration that the person who caused the incident hadn't checked on her, and Hagakure agreed. They walked together to Recovery Girl's office. Upon arrival, the blonde girl opened the door and called for Recovery Girl. The nurse turned to them, noticing the unconscious girl in Midoriya's arms, and instructed them to bring her to a bed and explain what had happened. Midoriya recounted the chaotic scene, placing the honey-brown-haired girl onto the bed. Recovery Girl assured them she would check on her condition and asked the blonde girl to inform their professor. As they were leaving, the blonde girl called out to Midoriya, thanking him for helping her friend. She expressed her embarrassment over her Japanese skills, wishing she could speak it perfectly. The others recognized that she was speaking English, a language they didn't understand. To everyone's surprise, Midoriya responded in fluent English, revealing that he had learned from people at the orphanage. The blonde girl was thrilled and hugged Midoriya, who returned the gesture, causing some of the girls to feel a pang of jealousy. She introduced herself as Pony Tsunatori and asked him to call her Pony. Just as Midoriya was about to introduce himself, the bell rang, prompting Pony to rush off to class while thanking everyone. Midoriya then turned to his classmates, concerned about their well-being. They reassured him that they were fine and praised his earlier actions. Yaoyorozu acknowledged that while she didn't usually condone yelling, he had done well in that situation. Ida remarked that he had made the right choice in voting for Midoriya as a representative. Outside, the police arrived and instructed everyone to leave unless they wanted to face consequences. Midoriya observed the scene, contemplating the potential benefits of being a leader and whether he could become a great one like the legends he admired. He clenched his hand, deep in thought. Yaoyorozu asked what Pony had said to him. Midoriya explained that she mentioned her name, her struggles with Japanese, and her happiness at finding someone who could speak English. Back in Class 1A, the students eagerly awaited All Might's arrival to teach them hero basics, but instead, Aizawa appeared, announcing that they were improving. Since All Might was out sick and the media was still lingering around, the Hero Basics class was cancelled. The students of Class 1A expressed their disappointment, feeling frustrated by the news. Aizawa, with a stern glare, silenced them and then announced that they would be going to the USJ next week. Kaminari's excitement was palpable, but Aizawa quickly clarified that they were not visiting Universal Studios Japan. Instead, the USJ stood for Unforeseen Situation Joint Test, where they would learn the basics of apprehending villains in various environments. Tsu asked why they had to wait a week, and Aizawa explained that they would postpone the trip until All Might was better. He also mentioned that they would be joining another hero course class, instructing Midoriya and Yaoyorozu to greet them the following day to foster good relationships. After Aizawa left, the students lingered to chat. Kirishima lamented the missed opportunity to try out new moves, while Tsu pointed out that it was unavoidable with their teacher absent. Kaminari admitted he wasn't ready to face villains yet, shivering at the thought. Uraraka questioned his fear, and Shiro explained that as students, they were vulnerable to the many villains out there who often banded together for nefarious purposes. Mineta added to the fear, recalling how even professional heroes struggled against some villains. Bakugo dismissed their concerns, declaring that the villains were weak and he would easily defeat them. Yaoyorozu reminded everyone to be cautious outside of school until the media attention faded, though she felt safe within the school grounds. Kirishima then invited Bakugo to the arcade, teasing him about being scared of losing. Bakugo, irritated, accepted the challenge, and the two left together, followed by Kaminari, Shiro, and Sato, who thought it sounded fun. After school, Ishido expressed her relief at getting out early, while Hagakure pointed out they had to wait for the last bell. Ida, ever serious, acknowledged the situation but noted the importance of studying. The students discussed their plans, with some opting to head home, while Ishido and Hagakure decided to go to the mall. Uraraka asked to join, along with Kami. Ishido invited Midoriya, but he declined, citing his busy schedule, which made her a bit sad. As Midoriya walked back to the orphanage, Ishido expressed her disappointment, wishing he could join them. The others tried to comfort her, but she revealed her desire to buy a new swimsuit, which shocked the group. The girls blushed, and Ida was taken aback by their reactions. Upon arriving at the orphanage, Midoriya was met by Torvald and Sakura. Torvald ordered him to get to work, reminding him that having friends did not grant him the freedom to be alone. Midoriya completed his tasks, but when dinner time came, Torvald informed him they would be out for the night and instructed him to put the children to bed. Midoriya protested against wasting the food, wanting to give it to the kids, but Torvald and Sakura dismissed his concerns, engaging in their own affectionate banter as Midoriya watched, feeling trapped in the situation. He thought he might be sick. Midoriya felt a tight grip around his neck, causing him to choke. The realization that no one was physically holding him meant that Sakura was using her quirk on him. With a menacing smile, she approached him, her presence intimidating. Sakura's quirk, Mindquake, granted her psychokinetic abilities, allowing her to manipulate objects and create mental shockwaves. This made her a cunning and manipulative opponent, capable of controlling her environment and those around her. As she stood close to Midoriya, she waited for a response, but before he could speak, Torvald stepped in, placing a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya felt a burning sensation as he noticed that Torvald's hand had transformed into molten magma. Torvald's quirk, Magma Mastery, allowed him to generate and control magma, creating a fiery force that could incinerate obstacles. Midoriya winced in pain, struggling to breathe, and decided to concede to their intimidation. He managed to speak, saying he had said nothing, and as they released him, he dropped to the ground, gasping for air. Sakura smirked, satisfied with his response, while Torvald continued to taunt him. As Midoriya caught his breath, a little girl approached him, concern etched on her face. She asked if he was okay, as all the kids in the orphanage affectionately called him Big Bro for his protective nature. Midoriya assured Anya, the pink-haired girl, that he was fine, though she reminded him that her quirk allowed her to read minds. He admitted he didn't want them to worry, but her question about who worried about him made him feel a pang of sadness. He quickly shook off the feeling and focused on her. He decided to finish preparing dinner, and Anya insisted he was lying about being okay. He confessed he didn't want to waste food and asked her to stop reading his mind. She offered to help, and he agreed, instructing her to set the table while he handled the cutting. After they finished preparing dinner, Midoriya called everyone to the table. The kids eagerly gathered, and he asked them to wait while he said grace, a tradition they followed. Once he finished, they dug into the chicken katsu with enthusiasm. After dinner, Midoriya sent the kids to bed, washed the dishes, and headed to his room. As he was about to sleep, he heard a voice behind him and turned to see Anya with her stuffed animal, Mr. Chimers. She confessed she couldn't sleep and asked if she could join him. He welcomed her to the bed, helping her settle in. As he prepared to sleep, Anya gently tapped him, moving closer. She asked if she would get adopted, and he reassured her that she would. When she questioned him again, he affirmed his certainty, teasing that anyone would want a cute little girl like her. Grateful, Anya drifted off to sleep, and Midoriya wrapped his arms around her, listening to her gentle snores. He picked up his phone and scrolled through memories with friends, reflecting on Anya's earlier words. Eventually, he succumbed to sleep, still cradling her. Meanwhile, Torvald and Sakura approached a bar. When they knocked, a man opened a compartment and asked for a password. Torvald dismissed the request, while Sakura insisted they were expected. The man closed the compartment and opened the door for them, apologizing for the misunderstanding. Inside, they were greeted by Kurogiri, a dark figure in a suit with yellow eyes. He gestured for them to enter a portal that appeared before them. Stepping through, they found themselves in the presence of two figures, a scrawny man with light blue hair dressed in black and a tall man in a tuxedo, his face obscured by shadow. Kurogiri announced their arrival, bowing to the master. The shadowed figure addressed Torvald and Sakura, indicating he had something important to discuss regarding UA, where one of their acquaintances studied. They confirmed their understanding and readiness to monitor the student closely, vowing not to disappoint. All for one. At Class 1A, it was a new day, and Midoriya had just walked in, heading toward his seat when Ishido and Hagakure stopped him. They both pouted, expressing their disappointment. Ishido pointed out that he hadn't replied to her texts, while Hagakure mentioned he had ignored her calls. Midoriya checked his phone and realized he had many missed calls and unread messages, which startled him. Just as he was about to respond, Uraraka approached, defending him and reminding the girls that he wouldn't ignore them on purpose. Midoriya quickly apologized, explaining he had been busy. Ishido couldn't stay mad and smiled, and Hagakure agreed, also smiling. Tsu then asked what Midoriya had been busy with, but before he could answer, Yaoyorozu and Jiro joined them, speculating about his homework or personal matters. Midoriya wondered if they had even received homework that day. Uraraka shifted the conversation, asking Midoriya what he thought they would be doing. He started to respond when the classroom door opened, prompting everyone to rush to their desks as Mr. Aizawa entered, bringing silence. He praised their progress and announced a visit to the USJ that Friday, where they would learn essential skills for apprehending villains and handling disaster rescues. Kami expressed her surprise at the rescue drills, and Midoriya confirmed they would be participating. Aizawa then instructed Midoriya, as the class representative, to greet Class 1B to foster a better relationship. Yaoyorozu was asked to accompany him as the vice president. When Ida requested that the rest of the class join them, Aizawa declined, warning that some might jeopardize the relationship, specifically calling out Bakugo and Mineta. As Midoriya and Yaoyorozu left for Class 1B, Mineta expressed his frustration over Midoriya getting to spend time with Yaoyorozu and meet the girls from the other class. Kaminari questioned Mineta's reasoning, while Shiro and Tsuyu reassured him that Midoriya was not the type to attract attention in that way. Tokoyami noted that Midoriya would make a good impression, unlike Mineta, who would have scared the girls away. Meanwhile, Midoriya felt nervous as he and Yaoyorozu approached Class 1B. Just as his hand began to shake, Yaoyorozu called out to him, asking about their plan for making a good impression. Midoriya admitted he didn't have a clear plan, feeling uncertain in his new role. Yaoyorozu encouraged him, and he felt a bit better. They reached the large door marked 1B, and Midoriya took a deep breath before opening it. To their surprise, They found a male student bound with a sack over his head, seemingly unconscious. The scene left them wide-eyed and speechless as the class turned to stare at them. Breaking the silence, Midoriya introduced himself and Yaoyorozu as representatives from Class 1A. A female student with long orange hair approached them, introducing herself as Itsuka Kendo, the class representative. She also introduced her vice representative, Nairenjiki Shoda, who bowed politely. Kendo extended her hand for a handshake but mistakenly aimed it at Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu corrected her, pointing out that Midoriya was the class representative. Kendo apologized for the mix-up, and Shoda nervously bowed again. Midoriya reassured them that it was no problem, and Kendo confirmed their roles in Class 1A. Just then, something unexpectedly pushed Midoriya into the classroom, catching him off guard. Midoriya pulled Kendo down, and they both fell to the ground with Midoriya landing on top of her. He quickly got back up and extended his hand to help her. He asked if she was okay, and Kendo replied that she was fine, wondering what had happened. Midoriya expressed his confusion, feeling as if someone had pushed him. Just then, a familiar voice called out to him, and he turned to see Pony running toward him, her face lighting up with joy as she hugged him. Pony exclaimed how happy she was to see him again and shared that he had helped her get Komori to Recovery Girl's office during an incident. The students in the classroom were surprised to learn that Midoriya was the one Pony had spoken about. Kendo approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder, and thanked him for helping Komori. Midoriya humbly brushed off the praise, saying he had just done what anyone would do. However, a shy voice interrupted him, and he turned to see a girl he recognized from high school. She approached him, her eyes wide with surprise as she recalled their past. She introduced herself as Kinoko Komori, and Midoriya noted her unique appearance, with cat-like eyes and pupils resembling the caps of cross-sliced mushrooms. Kendo was curious about their connection, and Midoriya confirmed they had attended the same high school, with Komori nodding in agreement. Shoda remarked on the coincidence of running into someone they knew, and Yaoyorozu pointed out the unconscious student tied up nearby. Kendo explained that he didn't seem to like their class for some reason, so they decided to keep him quiet. Midoriya understood the situation, thinking about how every class seemed to have its own troublemaker. Just then, a girl with large, upturned green eyes and long, pointed teeth caught his attention. She introduced herself as Setsuna Tokage and expressed her surprise at finding someone like him in Class 1A. Midoriya introduced himself, and the revelation shocked the room. Whispers spread among the students as they questioned his identity. Setsuna commented on his reputation, saying he looked cute and praised his impressive power. Kendo, feeling protective, pulled Setsuna back and suggested introducing Midoriya to the rest of the class. Midoriya hesitated, then asked if he could write down everyone's quirks, surprising everyone. Kendo was confused but agreed, and Midoriya explained that it was a hobby of his to learn about others. Quirks. Setsuna eagerly offered to share her quirk, adding a playful tone to her words. Just as Kendo prepared to intervene, Setsuna was unexpectedly wrapped in a vine, leaving Midoriya astonished. Another girl approached, her hair made of green, thorn-covered vines, and she scolded Setsuna for her behavior. Midoriya watched as Setsuna tried to break free, her head floating in the air, leaving him both surprised and intrigued by the unfolding events. Geez, she was always a killjoy. Setsuna floated her head toward the female student named Shiozaki. Shiozaki responded sternly, insisting that Setsuna should not act in such sinful behavior. Setsuna, turning to Midoriya, playfully remarked that she was just messing with him, unless he wanted it to be more serious. Her teasing was abruptly interrupted as Shiozaki tightened her vines around her. Kendo stepped in, urging Setsuna to stop and Shiozaki to let her go. They complied, and Kendo turned to Midoriya and Yaoyorozu, who had been watching the scene unfold. She apologized for Setsuna's antics, explaining that she often acted this way with certain people. Midoriya reassured her that it was all right, they were used to such behavior. Kendo was surprised to hear that, and Yaoyorozu confirmed that they had students who acted similarly, especially toward Midoriya. Kendo then smiled and invited Midoriya to meet their classmates. She introduced Yosetsu Owaze, who explained that his quirk, weld, allowed him to fuse any two objects he touched at the atomic level, even living things. Sen Kaibara introduced himself next, sharing that his quirk, gyrate, enabled his body parts to spin at high speed, functioning like drills that could deflect attacks and wear down armor. Tagaru Kamakiri followed, describing his quirk, razor sharp, which allowed him to create incredibly sharp blades from his body that he could alter in shape. Shirhai Kuwaro introduced himself, explaining that his quirk, black, allowed him to meld with shadows or black objects, enabling quick attacks and retreats. Itsuka Kendo introduced herself again, explaining her quirk, big fist, which allowed her hands to grow large enough to envelop a person and deliver powerful punches. Yui Kodai introduced her quirk, size, which enabled her to change the size of non-living things, creating giant walls from tiny objects. Kinoko Komori nervously introduced herself, revealing her quirk, mushroom, which allowed her to spread various mushroom spores in humid environments. Ibara Shiozaki introduced herself, explaining that her quirk, vines, allowed her vine-like hair to stretch and serve as shields or immobilize enemies. Jiroda Shishida shared that his quirk, beast, enabled him to become bigger and stronger, enhancing his senses significantly. Nairenjiki Shoda introduced his quirk, twin impact, which allowed him to deliver a second, more powerful strike after an initial hit. Pony Tsunatori introduced herself, expressing her frustration at her stutter before explaining her quirk, horn cannon, which allowed her to release and manipulate up to 4 horns at once. Akiza Izinski introduced herself curtly, while Kozai Tsuburaba expressed his hopes for a good competition, explaining his quirk, solid air, which turned exhaled air into rigid, invisible walls. Tetsu introduced himself, explaining that his quirk, steel, allowed him to turn his body into metal, becoming tougher with iron consumption. Setsuna Tokage introduced herself, sharing that her quirk, lizard tail splitter, allowed her to split her body into floating pieces and regenerate from the largest remaining part. Manga Fukudashi introduced his quirk, comic, which allowed the onomatopoeias he spoke to become physical manifestations. Juzo Hananuki introduced himself, explaining his quirk, softening, which softened objects with a touch and reverted them with a second touch. Kojiro Bando introduced himself, explaining that his quirk, semidine, allowed him to control the drying speed of glue emitted from his face. Reiko Yanagi introduced her quirk, poltergeist, which allowed her to manipulate objects weighing no more than a person. Hiryu Rin introduced himself, sharing that his quirk, scales, allowed him to grow tough scales for protection or fire them as projectiles. After Midoriya met all the students in Class B and learned about their quirks, he diligently wrote them down in his notebook. Each student was unique, yet there were similarities among them, much like in his own class. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu were enjoying their time with Class B, and the students appreciated their company until a loud laugh disrupted the moment. A voice echoed, laughing heartily, and the students of Class 1B groaned in unison. Midoriya felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized that laugh. He slowly turned, hoping he was mistaken. The voice continued, greeting him and expressing delight at seeing him again. Midoriya's thoughts raced, filled with frustration as he recognized Nito Monoma. The class was surprised to learn that Midoriya and Monoma knew each other, but not for positive reasons. Kendo asked if they were acquainted, and Midoriya sighed, confirming that they had attended the same high school. Monoma, excitedly declaring that Midoriya was in Class 1A, proclaimed that their rivalry would determine who the superior beings were. Midoriya, exasperated, insisted that he didn't care about being better. Yaoyorozu, confused, asked who Monoma was and why he acted that way. Before Midoriya could respond, Monoma interjected, shocked that they didn't know him. He introduced himself as the strongest and most talented student in Class 1B, prompting a sweat drop from Awaze, who remarked on Monoma's self-promotion. Komori whispered to Yui, questioning how Monoma had even managed to get loose. Shishida reminded Monoma about their agreement to avoid causing problems. They were all trying to make a good impression. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu thought that Monoma reminded them of Ida. Monoma smirked and remarked that it was irritating that Class A had 2 famous students. Manga sighed, clearly annoyed by Monoma's antics. Before Monoma could finish his thought, Kendo swiftly knocked him out with a chop to the neck. She apologized for Monoma's behavior, placing a hand on her head. Midoriya sighed in agreement, feeling the weight of their situation. Yaoyorozu cleared her throat and suggested it was time to head back. Setsuna, with tears in her eyes, expressed her desire to keep Midoriya around, having just met another green-haired student. Kendo firmly told her no, but Setsuna proposed trading Monoma instead. Midoriya, while wishing to avoid Monoma, explained that Class A was already dealing with one annoying blonde and didn't want to add another to the mix. Kendo was surprised to learn that they had to deal with someone like Monoma too, and Yaoyorozu agreed, stating he seemed worse. The students of Class B shared their frustrations about dealing with an egotistical student, realizing they all had similar challenges. Midoriya noted that the situation would drive their homeroom teacher to consider transferring or quitting if things got out of hand. Kendo was astonished by how bad it could get, and both Midoriya and Yaoyorozu nodded in agreement. They bid farewell to Class B, but Kendo called out to Midoriya before they left. She wished to see him again, though she struggled to express her feelings. Midoriya smiled back, looking forward to working with them. Inside the classroom, Setsuna grinned, teasing Kendo about her interest in Midoriya. Kendo was flustered and denied it, while Monoma protested that it was unacceptable for her to like someone from Class A, especially Midoriya. Kendo silenced him with a punch, clearly irritated. Meanwhile, Akiza stared at the door where Midoriya and Yaoyorozu had exited, contemplating her thoughts about Midoriya and the challenges he posed. As Midoriya and Yaoyorozu walked back to their classroom, she noticed his cheerful demeanor. When she commented on it, Midoriya realized he was indeed in a good mood, pleased that the meeting with Class B had gone well. Yaoyorozu agreed, noting the similarities between the two classes. However, Midoriya expressed his concern about encountering Bakugo and Monoma again. Yaoyorozu reassured him that they would manage, and Midoriya jokingly imagined the chaos if they traded him for Monoma, mimicking Bakugo's voice. Yaoyorozu laughed, and he continued with a perfect impression of Monoma, causing her to laugh even harder. Midoriya speculated that Mr. Aizawa might want to avoid dealing with them altogether. After entering their classroom, they continued their day as usual. Later, when Midoriya returned to the orphanage, he and Anya cleaned up, with Midoriya assigning her small tasks. He noticed that the adults were acting strangely, eavesdropping on his conversations about Yue. After they finished cleaning, Anya sat beside him, concerned about his well-being. Midoriya smiled and reassured her that helping the children made him happy, which brought a smile to her face. She hugged him tightly and he returned the gesture, feeling a sense of warmth. Midoriya then suggested they watch her favorite cartoon and play spies afterward, which filled Anya with joy. They enjoyed watching Spy Wars together, and afterward, they played a game called Spies with her stuffed animals. Midoriya reflected on how enjoyable the day had been. On Friday, excitement filled the air as everyone prepared for their trip to the USJ. The class eagerly awaited Mr. Aizawa's arrival, and Midoriya felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation, knowing that Class B would be joining them. When he heard Mr. Aizawa approaching, he alerted the class, ready for the day's training. Aizawa walked in, and the room fell silent. He informed the class that it was Friday, which meant they would be going to the USJ that day. 4 teachers would accompany them, himself, 2 guest teachers, and the homeroom teacher for Class B. He also mentioned that Class B would be joining them, sparking curiosity among the students about who the guest teachers would be. Midoriya reflected on the fact that he and Yaoyorozu had never met Class B's homeroom teacher, wondering if it was a special case. Shiro raised his hand to ask what kind of training they would be doing. Aizawa revealed a card with the word rescue on it, explaining that they would be dealing with natural disasters, shipwrecks, and similar scenarios. Kaminari expressed excitement about the upcoming challenges, and Ishido enthusiastically agreed. Kirishima felt a thrill at the prospect of true hero training, while Tsu mentioned her eagerness to demonstrate her skills in the water. Aizawa then informed them that they could choose whether to wear their hero costumes this time, cautioning them that they might not be fully accustomed to them yet and that the training would take place at an off-campus facility. He instructed everyone to prepare for the bus ride. As the students got ready for rescue training, Midoriya felt a surge of admiration for the training, recalling All Might's debut video. He clenched his fist, determined to become the greatest hero. Later, outside, the class awaited the bus and Class B's arrival. Midoriya stood in his hero suit, which had some patched repairs, including his mask and respirator. The girls approached him, with Uraraka waving and Ishido asking if he was excited. Hagakure expressed her enthusiasm, while Jiro admitted to feeling nervous. And reassured her that she wasn't alone, and Kami encouraged them all, adding a playful wink that left the girls puzzled. Midoriya agreed with Kami, assuring Jiro that she would do just fine. Yaoyorozu expressed concern about the condition of Midoriya's costume, particularly his mask. He acknowledged the damage but reassured her that he had managed to fix it enough for it to be usable. Before they could continue, a maniacal laugh echoed in the air, and Midoriya recognized it immediately, feeling irritation wash over him. Class A turned to see Class B arriving, with Monoma striking a dramatic pose at the front. He greeted Class A with a boastful declaration of superiority, which elicited annoyance from his classmates. As Class A murmured among themselves, Kirishima questioned Monoma's behavior, while Kaminari and Siro expressed their confusion. Ida chastised Monoma for his vulgarity, and Ishido and Jiro shared their disbelief at his arrogance. Kami remarked on Monoma's antics, calling it a major flop. Bakugo, equally irritated, shared Midoriya's sentiment about Monoma. When Monoma addressed Bakugo, the latter remained silent but rolled his eyes, feeling exasperated by the situation. Monoma taunted Bakugo, who snapped back with a fierce retort. Their exchange escalated, prompting the other students to share a collective thought about the chaos unfolding. Just as Midoriya prepared to intervene, Kendo stepped in, delivering a swift neck chop that knocked Monoma out. She expressed her desire for peace and turned to Midoriya with an apologetic smile, acknowledging the trouble Monoma caused. Midoriya reassured her that it was all right, relating to her frustration. Kendo then turned her attention to Bakugo, teasingly pointing him out as a headache for Midoriya. Bakugo bristled at the comment, but Midoriya quickly covered his mouth to prevent a retort. He chuckled and pushed Bakugo away, while Kendo complimented Midoriya's costume. Before Midoriya could respond, he noticed Kendo's hero costume, which featured a stylish teal cheapao with yellow accents. He was about to compliment her when he felt someone grab his arm. It was Setsuna, who playfully flirted with him, causing surprise among Midoriya and the girls from both classes, who felt a pang of jealousy. The boys in both classes envied Midoriya for his attention from the girls, feeling a mix of admiration and frustration. Midoriya greeted Setsuna warmly, admitting he had missed her, which made her blush. Kendo, feeling irritated, was about to intervene when the sound of a bus horn caught everyone's attention. The students turned to see a large bus arriving. Once it came to a stop, Mr. Aizawa and another teacher, Vlad King, emerged. Aizawa introduced himself as the homeroom teacher for Class A, while Vlad King introduced himself, inviting the students to call him by his hero name. For those who noticed there was only one bus, it was because the school had decided that both hero courses would participate in the same activity. Aizawa explained that this meant whichever class completed their task first, the other class would join in, ensuring no one fell behind. Vlad King added that they would remind everyone when they met their special guests and instructed the class representatives to call their classmates onto the bus. Aizawa reassured them that the bus could accommodate all of them, as it was designed for UA and could hold 50 people. Once Aizawa and Vlad King finished their announcements, Midoriya and Kendo organized their classmates into a single file to board the bus. After everyone was seated, Midoriya and Kendo took their places at the front alongside their teachers. The bus then set off toward the USJ. During the ride, most students chatted excitedly, while a few chose to remain quiet. One student had been knocked out due to a kendo move. Midoriya was absorbed in his hero analysis for the future notebook, diligently jotting down notes about his classmates' quirks and potential training methods or dangers. He planned to illustrate his classmates, including those from Class B, in their costumes, even depicting some who had not yet revealed theirs. Unbeknownst to others, Midoriya had developed his drawing skills through numerous sketches he created for the children at the orphanage. As Midoriya prepared to start on and Akiza's pages, he was unaware that some students were calling out to him. Suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder, startling him. He snapped out of his trance, noticing that every student, including the teachers, was looking at him. Embarrassed, he turned to see Kendo, her hand enlarged. Kendo expressed her concern for Midoriya, asking if he was okay. He reassured her that he was fine, just lost in his notebook, and inquired about what was happening. Kendo apologized for interrupting him, and he smiled, making the girls in Class 1A feel a twinge of jealousy. Before Kendo could continue, Setsuna, sitting across from Midoriya with Yanagi, Kodai, and Pony, interrupted, curious about what he was writing. Ashido was shocked to hear Setsuna call Midoriya by the nickname she had given him, and her jealousy flared. Midoriya explained that he was gathering information about everyone on the bus. Setsuna asked if she could take a look, and Pony eagerly joined in, raising her hand. Midoriya hesitated, unsure if he wanted to share his journal, but Kendo quickly stepped in, reminding everyone that it was Midoriya's choice whether to share. This response disappointed the two girls, but Midoriya eventually agreed to let them see it. Delighted, the girls flipped through the pages of his notebook, genuinely impressed by his drawings. Setsuna complimented Midoriya, while Pony exclaimed how much the drawing of her resembled her. Kendo also expressed interest in looking through it, and soon Yanagi and Kodai joined in, asking to see it as well. Midoriya consented, and the three girls were equally impressed. Kodai asked if that was why Midoriya had inquired about their quirks when they first met. He admitted that it was, feeling a bit embarrassed. This revelation surprised his classmates, who had never seen him like this before. Kodai then asked if he truly believed her quirk could be powerful. Midoriya enthusiastically affirmed that with proper training, she could be a formidable hero, capable of using her quirk to create massive objects to defeat villains. As he rambled on, Kodai unexpectedly hugged him tightly, catching everyone off guard. Midoriya gently embraced her back before she released him and returned to her seat, smiling, which astonished her classmates. They were all taken aback by her smile, especially the boys from both classes, who found it adorable. Kodai thanked Midoriya for his encouraging words, and he stammered a response. The rest of Class A and B then asked if they could see his notebook, to which he agreed. As everyone admired his sketches and offered compliments, Tsuyu, sitting beside him, called for his attention. Meanwhile, and Akiza observed Midoriya closely, and admired how he made her quirks sound impressive, prompting her to consider sharing her own, though she felt nervous about how it might be perceived. Akiza watched him with suspicion, having trust issues from past experiences, even though she didn't believe he was a bad person. Tsuyu mentioned that Midoriya's quirk reminded her of All Might's, a sentiment Kendo and others echoed in agreement. Just then, Aizawa announced that they had arrived, and both classes stepped off the bus, gazing in awe at the expansive USJ. Aizawa introduced another pro-hero they would meet. A voice called out, greeting everyone, and Midoriya's eyes widened in recognition as he realized it was the pro-hero 13, well known for saving heroes. She was Midoriya's favorite hero, and her excitement surprised him. 13 greeted the enthusiastic student, expressing her pleasure in meeting a fan. Aizawa then inquired about All Might's whereabouts, to which 13 responded by holding up 3 fingers. Both Aizawa and Vlad King sighed, realizing they would have to proceed without him, a sentiment Midoriya overheard. As everyone entered the UJ, both classes were awestruck by the sights inside. They walked through the entrance to the central plaza, which connected various zones, including the collapse, landslide, mountain, conflagration, flood, and windstorm zones. They marveled at the impressive setup, wondering how UA could afford such an extensive facility. Suddenly, Midoriya felt a sharp headache while 13 explained their activity. He clutched his head in pain, drawing the concern of nearby students. Uraraka asked if he was okay, while Kendo inquired about his condition. Before Midoriya could respond, he heard a voice that wasn't his own warning him to be cautious. As he lifted his head slowly, he walked toward the front, capturing everyone's attention. Yaoyorozu called out to him, confused by his behavior. Midoriya then noticed a purple mist portal forming in the central plaza, with a man's hands extending from it. Kirishima remarked on the impressive fake villains, while Tetsu expressed his admiration for their manliness. Midoriya, however, realized the truth. These were not mere illusions. A man shrouded in hands, another cloaked in purple smoke, and a giant bird-like creature emerged, accompanied by a group of criminals. Aizawa's eyes widened as he declared that these were the real deal. He and Vlad King rushed down the stairs, Aizawa instructing 13 to protect the students while they handled the situation. The villains attempted to attack, but Aizawa and Vlad King skillfully dodged and countered their moves. One villain commented on the unexpected presence of Eraserhead and Vlad King, expressing surprise that All Might was absent. Kurogyri, another villain, suggested that it must have been a last-minute change. Another villain saw an opportunity to cause chaos, suggesting they could harm students to hurt All Might's pride, instructing Kurogyri to ensure no one escaped. Meanwhile, Midoriya watched in awe as the pro-heroes fought against the large group of villains. Lost in thought, he barely noticed when his classmates snapped him back to reality. They were scared and unsure of what to do. Once again, he heard the mysterious voice in his head urging him to take action to protect his classmates. Determined, Midoriya realized he had a responsibility as a hero. He approached Ida, urging him to leave the room and inform the other teachers of the situation. Despite Ida's hesitation, Midoriya insisted, emphasizing that he needed to act. Kendo encouraged Ida to go, and with a final push from Midoriya, he decided to run down to assist the teachers, despite his classmates' protests. As Midoriya dashed forward, he donned his mask, activated his quirk, and leaped toward the villains. One of the villains noticed him, prompting Aizawa and Vlad King to turn their attention to the young hero. Midoriya landed and swiftly attacked, punching a villain in the gut. He moved from one opponent to another, taking them down with impressive speed and strength, leaving the villains bewildered. Both teachers observed Midoriya's remarkable abilities, realizing he was more talented than they had anticipated. As Midoriya continued to fight, he struggled against the increasing number of villains. He leaped high into the air, using his quirk to send several villains flying away with a flick of his fingers. Midoriya landed near Aizawa and Vlad King, who were back-to-back in battle. Aizawa shouted for him to return to safety, while Vlad King echoed the sentiment. Midoriya, undeterred, explained that he couldn't stand by while his teachers fought. He grabbed Aizawa's scarf and dashed towards 6 villains, wrapping it around their necks and pulling it tight, knocking them out. Impressed, Aizawa and Vlad King acknowledged Midoriya's skills. Meanwhile, the villain covered in hands observed the scene, recognizing Midoriya as a potential threat but dismissing him as inconsequential. Back with the other students, they watched in awe as Midoriya fought valiantly. Kaminari exclaimed in surprise, while Shota noted his impressive combat skills. Kirishima and Tetsu cheered for Midoriya's manliness. The girls were particularly amazed, with Shiozaki praying for his safety. Jiro snapped out of her admiration and turned to Ida, urging him to follow Midoriya's orders. Setsuna and Kami echoed her sentiments, encouraging him to act. Ida, still hesitant, was interrupted when Kurogyri appeared, blocking his path. Kurogyri introduced himself and the League of Villains, revealing their intentions and the absence of All Might. It was unfortunate, but one villain wondered what the symbol of peace would think if a few of his students were harmed. As Bakugo, Kirishima, Kamakiri, and Tetsu charged at him, Kendo called out for them to wait. 13 shouted for them to stop, but her voice went unheard. Kurogyri used his powers to envelop the students in his purple mist, scattering them throughout the USJ, while some managed to remain in place. Meanwhile, Vlad King and Aizawa observed the chaos as Vlad King restrained some villains with his hardened blood. Aizawa, frustrated, wrapped his scarf around several villains, pulling them closer and delivering swift blows. He turned to Midoriya, warning him that his classmates were in danger. Vlad King echoed the urgency, noting that some of his own students were also in trouble. Midoriya, realizing the gravity of the situation, created a gust of wind to push some villains away. He was determined to reach his classmates but was concerned for the heroes. Vlad King urged him to go, assuring him that he could handle the villains. Just then, Midoriya noticed Kurogiri using his portals to transport his classmates. Frustrated, he dashed toward the entrance, where his friends recognized him and called out. Midoriya asked if everyone was okay and inquired about Ida. Ida reassured him that he was present, but the others were uncertain about the whereabouts of their classmates. They explained that Ida had gone to get help when Kurogiri appeared and teleported everyone away, leaving them frightened. Midoriya pondered where they could have been taken, and Setsuna suggested they might be in the different zones. Before they could strategize further, Kurogiri appeared behind them, stretching his misty arm toward Midoriya to teleport him away. In a surprising turn, Monoma copied Kurogiri's quirk and created a portal, calling for everyone to join him. Setsuna and Uraraka rushed to help, landing hits on Kurogiri, while Uraraka used her quirk to lift him. They urged Ida to hurry and get help, and he dashed out of the USJ. 13 praised the trio for their teamwork as Kurogiri vanished. Midoriya turned to Monoma, requesting his assistance to retrieve their classmates. He explained that Monoma's copied quirk could help them return everyone safely, emphasizing the importance of focusing on that rather than engaging in battle. Monoma hesitated, questioning why he should help, but Midoriya insisted that their classmates needed support. After a moment of silence, the others urged Monoma to cooperate. Finally, he agreed, and Midoriya swiftly picked him up in a fireman's carry, surprising everyone. Monoma protested, insisting he could walk, but Midoriya assured him it would be faster this way. As Midoriya prepared to leave, Uraraka, Ashido, Komori, and Setsuna expressed their concern for his safety. Midoriya reassured them that he was determined to help their friends, stating that it was what a hero would do. The girls remained worried, but they encouraged him to be careful. Midoriya promised to do his best and then told Monoma to get ready for a bumpy ride. With that, he dashed toward the zones to rescue their classmates. In the windstorm downpour zone, Koda, Tokoyami, Kurwaro, Shishida, and Rin were fighting off relentless villains. Shishida urged everyone to keep fighting, while Kurwaro noted the villains just kept coming. Tokoyami reminded them that Midoriya was also giving it his all, and Rin agreed they needed to fight just as hard. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind swept through, sending the villains crashing into a building. The students turned to see Midoriya and Monoma arriving. They called out to their friends, relieved to see them. Midoriya checked on everyone, and they confirmed they were okay, grateful for his timely arrival. Midoriya instructed Monoma to create a portal back to the entrance, and despite Monoma's initial bravado, he complied after Midoriya urged him to focus. As the portal opened, Midoriya encouraged everyone to go ahead while he and Monoma gathered the rest of their classmates. They nodded in agreement, ready to follow his lead. Then they walked through. Midoriya noted that they had completed one task and had 5 more to go as he picked up Monoma and headed for the next zone. In the flooded area, Midoriya and Monoma arrived to find villains lurking in the water. They quickly hid in nearby bushes and observed a boat surrounded by villains, where Tsu, Mineta, and Shoda, and Akiza were trapped. Midoriya contemplated their situation and formulated a plan. He suggested that he would go help their classmates while Monoma stayed hidden until it was safe. Monoma, frustrated, proposed teleporting Midoriya to them or bringing them to safety, but Midoriya insisted that doing so would expose them all to danger. Reluctantly, Monoma agreed to stay put as Midoriya dashed toward the boat. On the boat, the villains surrounded Tsu, Mineta, Shoda, Akiza, and En, who were increasingly anxious about their predicament. Mineta and Shoda expressed their fears, wondering if they would survive the encounter, and attempted to calm them, while Tsu questioned their options. Mineta lamented their ambush by villains intent on capturing All Might, and Shoda pointed out the overwhelming number of enemies surrounding them. Akiza, irritated by their panic, chastised them for forgetting their roles as aspiring heroes. Her outburst momentarily silenced the group, and they listened as the villains discussed their plans. The students cautiously peeked out, but the villains were focused on something else. Suddenly, they felt a presence land nearby and turned to see Midoriya, who lifted his mask. The students were surprised to see him. Midoriya asked if they were okay, but before he could finish, Mineta tackled him in a relieved embrace, expressing his gratitude for Midoriya's arrival. Midoriya struggled to break free, and Shota thanked him for coming. Tsu inquired about his presence, and Midoriya explained that he was there to help them return to safety, and raised a concern about their teachers, and Midoriya admitted he had left them to fend off the villains. Akiza, visibly upset, confronted him about abandoning their teachers, accusing him of being selfish. Midoriya was taken aback by her accusations, and Akiza continued to berate him, questioning his worthiness as a hero. She retrieved a dual monster card, prepared to confront him further. Midoriya, frustrated, raised his voice, asserting that he had not wanted to leave anyone behind. He explained that their teachers had instructed him to help their classmates and that he was acting in accordance with what heroes do. The tension in the air shifted as Akiza slowly released her grip on him, and the others were taken aback by Midoriya's passionate defense. Shota quietly remarked to Tsu, Mineta, and that they should avoid getting on Midoriya's bad side, and they nodded in agreement. Midoriya then requested their trust, regardless of their feelings toward him. Akiza challenged him, demanding to know why they should trust him. Midoriya responded that a true hero earns the trust of their peers, no matter how long it takes, which left Akiza momentarily speechless. Tsu asked what Midoriya planned to do next. After a moment of thought, he proposed creating a whirlpool to trap the villains while instructing Mineta to use his quirk to help contain them. Mineta was taken aback by the suggestion, doubting his abilities. Tsu and encouraged him, but Mineta continued to express his fears about failure. Midoriya placed a reassuring hand on Mineta's shoulder, urging him to understand that being a hero is defined by one's heart and determination, not just their quirk. His words resonated with everyone, instilling a newfound confidence. And Akiza were particularly affected, with Akiza reconsidering her earlier judgments about him. And, meanwhile, was transported back to her childhood memories. In her flashback, a young and cried in her mother's arms, feeling misunderstood due to her quirk. Her mother, Namuri Kayama, comforted her, explaining that fear often stems from misunderstanding. Anne's anger surfaced as she expressed her frustration over being labeled a villain because of her abilities. After a moment of reflection, Namuri decided to share a personal truth with Anne, hoping to provide her with the understanding she needed. She gently patted Anne's head and continued, explaining that what she was about to share needed to remain a secret, and nodded, eager to hear more. Namuri proudly declared herself a pro-hero, known as Midnight, which left Anne in awe. The revelation that Midnight was a hero surprised Anne, who couldn't believe it. Midnight shared her own experiences, recalling how people once viewed her quirk as villainous, fearing it would attract the wrong kind of attention. Anne listened intently, curious about how Midnight had navigated those challenges. Midnight encouraged Anne, stating that she had persevered through the hero course, proving everyone wrong. She expressed her belief in Anne's potential and reassured her that having friends who believed in her was crucial. Anne hesitated, admitting that she felt alone without friends. Midnight comforted her, assuring her that she would find the companionship she sought, perhaps even love in the future. She emphasized that true heroism comes from one's will and ambition, not just their quirk. Midnight encouraged Anne to show everyone her determination if she still wished to be a hero. Noticing Anne's lingering worries, she smiled and pulled her close, reminding her that it was okay to take her time in finding her path. As Anne reflected on that day, her confidence began to waver again, haunted by the taunts of her tormentors. She turned her gaze to Midoriya, who was preparing a plan. He confidently announced that he would lead the charge, instructing his classmates to follow his signal while Mineta set traps for the villains. As Midoriya approached the villains, they were taken aback by his boldness. They questioned his intentions, thinking he was reckless. Midoriya activated his quirk, creating a massive whirlpool, and urged his classmates to move. Tsu carried Mineta, and as they executed their part of the plan, Mineta threw his purple ball at the villains, successfully trapping them. Midoriya observed the plan unfold when he heard someone calling for him. It was Akiza, who reached out her hand, and he grasped it, landing safely beside her. After a moment, he called out to Monoma, who was still nearby. Their banter revealed their camaraderie, with Monoma expressing his frustration at the delay. Midoriya reminded him of the villains they had to contend with. Suddenly, Akiza hugged Midoriya, thanking him softly. This unexpected gesture surprised everyone, especially Monoma and Shota, who noted that Akiza was not usually so affectionate. And Tsu felt a pang of jealousy, while Mineta watched with frustration, wishing he had the same attention. Once they released the hug, Tsu quickly expressed their gratitude to Midoriya. He then instructed Monoma to create a portal for their classmates to return to safety. As they prepared to leave, Tsu and expressed their concern for Midoriya and Monoma's safety. Shota, feeling anxious about Kendo, asked Midoriya to bring her back. Midoriya assured him he would, encouraging Shota to stay strong as Class B's vice representative. With everyone through the portal, Midoriya and Monoma moved on to the next zone, determined to rescue their classmates. In the conflagration zone, Ojiro, Awaze, Pony, and Hananuki were battling against a relentless wave of villains. They fought bravely, but the heat and exhaustion began to take their toll. The villains, sensing their fatigue, closed in, taunting them. Just as the situation seemed dire, a damaged bus crashed into the villains, surprising everyone. Another bus followed, and the students turned to see Midoriya and Monoma, with Midoriya having thrown the buses to aid them. The tide of the battle began to shift as they prepared for the next phase of their rescue mission. Midoriya winced at the villains, realizing he might have overdone it. Monoma responded with sarcasm, questioning if Midoriya truly thought so. Ojiro, Awaze, Pony, and Hananuki approached, calling out to Midoriya. He asked if everyone was alright, to which Ojiro confirmed they were okay now. Pony smiled and expressed her gratitude for Midoriya's help, while Hananuki thanked him as well. Awaze, though a bit irritated, also acknowledged Midoriya's assistance. Midoriya glanced at the villains he had incapacitated with the bus, noting they were all unconscious before turning back to his classmates. He informed Monoma that the villains should be out for a while and asked if he knew what to do. Monoma rolled his eyes, reluctant to take orders from Class A, especially Midoriya, but created a portal to the entrance. Midoriya instructed his classmates to go through the portal, assuring them it would take them back safely. Pony hesitated, then quickly hugged Midoriya, asking him to be careful. He smiled and promised he would, and after they let go, she stepped through the portal just before it closed. The two heroes then moved on to the next zone. In the mountain zone, Kendo and Yaoyorozu fought off the villains while Jiro wielded a metal pipe created by Yaoyorozu. Bando used glue to immobilize the villains, and Shiozaki trapped them with her vines. However, Kaminari was feeling frightened. He panicked, questioning what they were going to do and if they were going to die, which annoyed Jiro. She urged him to use his electrical powers to help them escape. Kaminari, irritated, reminded Jiro that using too much of his quirk would put him in a vulnerable state. Yaoyorozu intervened, reminding them to stay focused on their situation. Bando echoed her sentiment, emphasizing the need to deal with the incoming villains. Shiozaki firmly stated that cowardice had no place among heroes, demonstrating her resolve by using her hair to strike two villains. Kendo expressed her urgency to finish the fight, concerned for the safety of her classmates. Just as two villains prepared to sneak attack her, Kaminari warned her to look out. Kendo turned to see the villains approaching, but they were swiftly captured by Shiozaki's vines. She declared that she would not allow them to gang up on someone who was unaware, feeling a sense of divine purpose to protect her classmates. Kaminari felt frustrated with himself, realizing he was a burden while everyone else fought bravely. The 6 students huddled together, tension filling the air. Yaoyorozu had an idea and asked Shiozaki how her hair handled electricity. Shiozaki calmly replied that it was not very conductive. Yaoyorozu proposed wrapping everyone in Shiozaki's hair to create a shield, allowing Kaminari to electrify the villains without harming his classmates. Kaminari was confused by the plan, and Jiro urged him to use his quirk. As Shiozaki formed the shield with her vines, Kaminari finally latched onto a large villain and unleashed his electricity, incapacitating the villains around them. After a moment of silence, Shiozaki released her shield to reveal the villains were all unconscious, while Kaminari felt drained. Just then, a large villain regained consciousness and prepared to attack Kaminari. The students were about to charge at it when a sudden thud echoed through the area. They turned to see that Monoma had knocked out the villain with a well-aimed strike. Though he was now unconscious himself, a noticeable bump on his head. The students were shocked to see Monoma in that state. Suddenly, they heard a familiar voice approaching. Midoriya appeared, cheerfully acknowledging his classmates and apologizing for Monoma's situation. He reassured them that everyone was fine and that he and Monoma were gathering everyone back to the entrance. Kaminari expressed his relief at seeing Midoriya, while Jiro thanked him for saving them and pointed out Kaminari's earlier panic. Yaoyorozu smiled, grateful for Midoriya's help, and Shiozaki praised him as if he were sent by a higher power. Bando questioned why Midoriya had thrown Monoma, and Kendo, still worried about her classmates, asked about their safety. Midoriya reassured her that everyone was okay and that they were working on getting everyone back. Just then, Monoma woke up and, still a bit dazed, hit Midoriya on the head with a metal pipe, expressing his frustration over being thrown at the villain. Midoriya defended himself, stating that Monoma had wanted to help. Their banter continued, with Shiozaki intervening to remind them to avoid using inappropriate language. Midoriya apologized, and Shiozaki accepted his apology while asserting that she would have to teach Monoma a lesson for his earlier words. Midoriya then asked Monoma to create the portal for their classmates, and Monoma, having calmed down, complied, opening the way for everyone to return safely. "Alright, everyone, your ride is ready." Yaoyorozu hesitated and asked about Midoriya and Monoma's plan. Midoriya explained that they were going to rescue their classmates. Kaminari and Bando expressed their disbelief, questioning the wisdom of such a risky move. Jiro voiced her concern, while Monoma revealed that they had already saved classmates in another zone. This revelation surprised the students, but Kendo quickly stepped in, insisting that she would join them to ensure her classmates were safe. Midoriya recognized her determination and asked her to check on everyone at the entrance instead, assigning Yaoyorozu to lead their class until he returned. Yaoyorozu agreed, albeit nervously. As they prepared to enter the portal, Shiozaki called out to Midoriya, giving him a gentle hug and wishing him safety before stepping through. Midoriya took a moment to gather himself before following Monoma into the next zone. In the entrance, Kendo and Yaoyorozu emerged from the portal, with Shiozaki being the last to arrive. With 13's help, they reassured their classmates that everything would be fine. They noticed Aizawa and Vlad King struggling against villains, both appearing exhausted. The girls silently hoped for Midoriya's safety. In the landslide zone, Hagakure, Kaibara, Kamakiri, and Tetsu were each battling villains. Kaibara urged everyone to keep moving forward, while Kamakiri welcomed the challenge. Tetsu expressed his enthusiasm, and Hagakure called for assistance. Suddenly, an enormous ice barrier formed around them, startling both the students and the villains. They turned to see Shoto Todoroki approaching, commenting on the embarrassment of the villains losing to a first-year student. Hagakure attempted to thank him, but he walked past her without acknowledgement, which frustrated her. She confronted him, but Todoroki insisted that they needed to learn to fend for themselves, further angering the group. Before tensions escalated, something landed nearby, causing everyone to freeze. They relaxed upon recognizing Midoriya carrying Monoma. Tetsu greeted them, and Kamakiri speculated about Monoma's presence. Midoriya explained that they were there to bring everyone back to the entrance. Kaibara thanked him, and Tetsu inquired about their plan. Midoriya instructed Monoma to create a portal, which he did, allowing their classmates to enter. After a quick hug from Hagakure, they stepped through, and Midoriya encouraged Monoma to hold on a little longer as they moved to the final zone. In the collapsed zone, Kirishima and the girls Kodai, Yanagi, and Kami watched as Bakugo fiercely battled villains, making them hesitant to join in. Kirishima commented on Bakugo's intensity, while Yanagi expressed her fear. Kodai turned to Kami, asking how she managed to handle Bakugo. Kami admitted she had no idea. After Bakugo finished his fight, he approached the others, boasting about his performance. Suddenly, a villain attempted a sneak attack, but Midoriya, along with Monoma, intervened, throwing the villain aside. Midoriya announced their arrival, surprising everyone. Before they could react, Bakugo confronted Midoriya angrily, questioning his presence. Midoriya retorted that he was there to help. Monoma chimed in, teasing Bakugo about needing assistance from a student from a superior class. Bakugo snapped back at Monoma, who challenged him, escalating the tension. Midoriya stepped in, urging them to focus on the task at hand, returning with their classmates. Yanagi asked about the others, and Midoriya explained that he and Monoma had been rescuing classmates and sending them back to safety. Kami expressed her admiration for Midoriya's efforts, acknowledging his positive energy. Midoriya turned to Monoma, urging him to create one last portal for the remaining students. Just as Monoma was about to act, Bakugo interrupted, expressing his determination not to be rescued. He declared that he would rather face the villains alone than be saved by anyone else. Before he could finish, Monoma opened a portal beneath him, causing Bakugo to tumble through, which elicited laughter from the other students. Midoriya acknowledged Monoma's action with a chuckle, appreciating the humor in the situation. Monoma then created a portal for the rest of the students, and as Midoriya prepared to follow, another portal unexpectedly opened beneath him, sending him falling through. In the central plaza, Midoriya landed with a thud. As he struggled to get up, a villain seized him by the collar. The villain, with a menacing demeanor, warned Midoriya not to attempt anything foolish, claiming that he would disintegrate the moment all 5 fingers touched him. The villain's companion confirmed that Midoriya was the one causing trouble for their group. Midoriya demanded to know who the villain was, and he introduced himself as Tamura Shigaraki, the leader of the League of Villains. Midoriya noticed Aizawa and Vlad King nearby, both catching their breath and concerned for the students' safety. He reassured them that everyone was all right and that 13 was watching over them. However, Shigaraki pointed out that 13 was in trouble, and Midoriya's heart sank as he saw her injured on the ground, her hero suit torn. The students at the entrance gasped when they realized Midoriya was in danger, with Mineta pointing him out in alarm. Uraraka expressed her concern, while Setsuna urged Monoma to create a portal for Midoriya, but he was too exhausted to help. Back in the central plaza, Shigaraki expressed admiration for Midoriya's efforts to save his classmates and instructed Kurogiri to bring out the main event. A portal opened, revealing a towering, black creature with an exposed brain, oversized eyes, and a beak-like mouth filled with sharp teeth. Its muscular form was covered in scars, and it loomed over the heroes and students, instilling fear. Midoriya was taken aback, feeling a wave of unease wash over him. Shigaraki introduced the creature as Nomu, the anti-symbol of peace, created specifically to defeat all might. Midoriya was horrified by the implication of the creature's purpose. Shigaraki then commanded Nomu to attack the pro-heroes. Aizawa activated his quirk, and Vlad King prepared to fight, but Nomu charged at them with incredible speed, knocking them to the ground. Midoriya watched in shock as the heroes struggled to recover from the overwhelming force of the creature. Shigaraki reveled in the chaos, explaining that Nomu was designed to withstand quirks, rendering Aizawa's efforts ineffective. As Nomu continued to assault the heroes, Midoriya felt a surge of frustration and guilt for not intervening. He glanced at his classmates, who were watching in fear, and realized he couldn't stand by any longer. Determined to act, Midoriya thought about the responsibilities of a hero. He resolved to help Aizawa and Vlad King, despite the danger. Shigaraki, sensing Midoriya's turmoil, taunted him, questioning whether witnessing the defeat of his mentors would break his spirit. Midoriya declared that nothing would stop him from becoming a hero. With newfound resolve, he elbowed Shigaraki, breaking free from his grip. He rushed towards the injured pro-heroes just as Nomu prepared to deliver a final blow. Midoriya quickly lifted both Aizawa and Vlad King, racing toward the entrance to get them to safety. As he ran, the 2 heroes called out to him in confusion, but Midoriya remained focused on his mission, determined to protect them and his classmates. When he reached the stairs, every student noticed him and rushed to the entrance. Class 1A called out to Mr. Aizawa, while Class 1B shouted for Vlad King. Midoriya felt a wave of guilt wash over him as Bakugo and Monoma prepared to speak. However, Shiozaki quickly used her vines to cover their mouths, preventing any negative comments directed at him. Midoriya expressed his regret, wishing he had acted sooner, and reassured him that it was okay, and Yaoyorozu added that they didn't hold him responsible. Komori stammered that he had done everything he could, while Pony and Kodai nodded in agreement. Kami encouraged him, saying he was doing great. Feeling slightly uplifted by their support, Midoriya turned his attention to the Nomu, which slammed its fists into the ground, seemingly contemplating its next move. Determined, Midoriya thought he couldn't just stand by. He needed to stop the creature at all costs. Activating his quirk, he dashed toward the Nomu. The students and pro-heroes watched in concern as the villains noticed a green blur. Before the Nomu could react, Midoriya landed a swift punch, creating a massive shockwave that astonished everyone. Shigaraki, infuriated by this display of strength, scratched the back of his neck in frustration. Shigaraki expressed his anger at the villains who had underestimated Midoriya's potential. Kurogiri reminded him that they had mentioned Midoriya's tendency to act independently. Shigaraki ordered the Nomu to eliminate Midoriya. The Nomu quickly recovered from the rubble and charged at Midoriya, attempting to land a punch. Midoriya skillfully dodged the attack, narrowly avoiding another strike. As the Nomu unleashed a flurry of punches, Midoriya evaded each one, impressing everyone watching. The students from classes 1A and 1B marveled at Midoriya's agility, while Shigaraki begrudgingly acknowledged his speed. Midoriya realized he had to act quickly before the Nomu could harm anyone else. He charged at the creature, delivering a punch and then maneuvering behind it to strike again. The impact caused the Nomu to stagger, prompting Midoriya to unleash a relentless series of punches, all landing successfully. With a final blow, he knocked the Nomu down. Breathing heavily, Midoriya celebrated his small victory, unaware that the battle was far from over. Shigaraki, with a confident smile, warned him not to celebrate just yet. Midoriya was taken aback when the Nomu stood back up, seemingly unfazed by the damage it had sustained. Midoriya was shocked to see the creature still standing. As Shigaraki laughed maniacally, he taunted Midoriya, revealing that the Nomu was designed to defeat All Might and possessed multiple quirks, including shock absorption. The revelation left everyone stunned, and Midoriya felt a wave of doubt wash over him. However, a voice echoed in his mind, urging him not to be discouraged. It reminded him that everyone was in danger and that he was the only one who could stop the Nomu. Gaining confidence from the voice, Midoriya resolved to take action. He knew he had to give it everything he had and push beyond his limits. As he unleashed his full power, a powerful wind swept through the area, generating shockwaves that astonished onlookers. Shigaraki and Kurogiri were knocked back, while the Nomu felt a minor impact. Shigaraki realized that Midoriya had been holding back. Determined to finish the fight, Shigaraki commanded the Nomu to attack. Midoriya responded by matching the Nomu's speed, appearing to create extra arms as he struck the creature from behind. He declared that the Nomu's quirk was shock absorption, not nullification, implying that there was a limit to its abilities. As Midoriya gained the upper hand, he launched the Nomu into the air, following it with relentless attacks. To the spectators, it seemed as if he was teleporting, moving with incredible speed. Midoriya proclaimed that a true hero would always find a way to prevail, which only fueled Shigaraki's anger. With a powerful strike, Midoriya sent the Nomu crashing down, creating a large crater. The onlookers were left in awe as time seemed to slow for the Nomu. Midoriya prepared for his final attack, reflecting on the lessons he had learned and the support he had received from his friends. He was ready to give it his all. He continued with determination, proclaiming that he would go beyond his limits. With a powerful punch aimed at Nomu's face, a shockwave erupted, causing the students at the entrance to stagger. The force of the blow sent Nomu crashing against the wall, leaving a significant impact. Nomu's body stood for a moment before collapsing to the ground, leaving Midoriya breathless and exhausted. Midoriya paused to catch his breath, feeling completely drained. He examined himself and noticed his arms were red and swollen from exerting his quirk at such intensity. His costume was torn, the tape on his mask had vanished, and some of the patches he had used for repairs were missing. He reflected on the battle, feeling a mix of disbelief and fear. He couldn't shake the thought of what he had done, staring at his hands in shock and exhaustion. The students at the entrance were stunned by Midoriya's unexpected victory, struggling to process what had just happened. Some were too shocked to speak. Mineta expressed his astonishment, while Kamakiri and Hananuki echoed their disbelief at Midoriya's achievement. Meanwhile, Bakugo and Monoma were both astonished and furious that Midoriya had managed to defeat Nomu so efficiently. They wondered how powerful he could truly be. Back with the villains, Shigaraki and Kurogyari were taken aback to see that Nomu, a creature designed to defeat All Might, had been defeated by a first-year student. This realization fueled Shigaraki's anger, and he longed for revenge against Midoriya. Shigaraki raged about how the situation had gone wrong, blaming others for underestimating Midoriya's strength. Kurogyari attempted to calm him, suggesting that perhaps they were unaware of Midoriya's true capabilities. As Shigaraki prepared to confront Midoriya, the young hero was too exhausted to defend himself, struggling to remain standing. The other students watched in fear for his safety. Just as Shigaraki lunged towards him, two figures dashed forward to intervene. Kurogyari noticed the approaching students and prepared to create a portal. Suddenly, a voice rang out, summoning a powerful defense. A massive plant wall erupted from the ground, glowing with energy. Shigaraki attempted to touch the wall, but it disintegrated upon contact. The heroes turned to see Akiza had arrived just in time. Akiza rushed to check on Midoriya, who assured her he was fine. However, Shigaraki was determined to eliminate both students, believing it would strike a blow against the symbol of peace. Kurogyari quickly created two portals, one behind each student. They warned each other just in time, but Shigaraki's hands emerged from the portals, reaching for them. At that moment, another voice called out, and a brilliant burst of blue light illuminated the scene, and appeared, using her quirk for the first time in years. Her appearance shocked everyone, especially Midoriya, who had never seen her quirk in action. The villains were equally surprised by her sudden transformation. As and commanded her quirk, a powerful attack surged forth, striking Shigaraki and Kurogyari. The villains reacted in pain, and moved closer to protect her friends. Kurogyari acknowledged the strength of En's quirk and urged Shigaraki to retreat, realizing they were outmatched. However, Shigaraki was unwilling to back down, charging toward the students. And Akiza took a defensive stance, while Midoriya struggled to join them, still recovering from his earlier exertion. Just as Shigaraki closed in, a series of gunshots rang out, striking him and forcing Kurogyari to shield him. Ida had returned, bringing reinforcements in the form of pro-heroes. The students felt a wave of relief as the teachers spread out to confront the villains. Shigaraki's frustration grew at the arrival of the heroes, but he still did not see All Might among them. Kurogyari insisted they leave, recognizing their disadvantage. As they prepared to escape through a portal, Shigaraki cast one last glare at Midoriya, vowing that they would meet again, and next time, he would not hold back. With the villains taken into custody and the injured being attended to, the atmosphere began to calm. Just then, All Might finally made his entrance, ready to reassure the citizens. However, he was met with a chorus of voices, startling him, except for Midoriya, who remained focused on the aftermath of the battle. All Might surveyed the damage and realized he had relied on Aizawa, Vlad King, and 13 to handle the situation. Just as he began to feel regret, he noticed Midoriya struggling to reach his classmates. Midoriya's vision blurred, and he was on the verge of collapsing. All Might rushed to him, catching him just before he fell. He reassured Midoriya that he had him. And Akiza, noticing Midoriya's condition, expressed their concern. Midoriya managed to say he was fine, just tired, though he was clearly out of breath. All Might acknowledged Midoriya's efforts, apologizing for putting him in such a difficult position and commending him for his bravery. He then asked Akiza to help Midoriya to the entrance. The two girls nodded and assisted Midoriya in a makeshift carry. As they moved, they could hear his labored breathing. Upon reaching the entrance, their classmates rushed over, alarmed by Midoriya's state. Uraraka and Kami asked if he was okay, while Yaoyorozu inquired about his condition, and reassured them that he was merely out of breath and needed rest. Uraraka offered her help, using her quirk to lighten Midoriya, making it easier for them to carry him. Ida, feeling guilty about not being faster, chastised himself for Midoriya's condition. Midoriya, in a soft voice, reassured him that he had done everything he could and urged him not to blame himself. This brought Ida some comfort, and the group left the USJ, boarding the bus back to UA. The atmosphere on the bus was heavy with silence, as the events of the day weighed on everyone. The girls frequently glanced at Midoriya, who was still resting, with Ida and Kirishima keeping a watchful eye on him. Upon returning to UA, the students headed to the locker rooms to change out of their hero suits. Midoriya surprised everyone by standing up as they approached the doors. Kirishima cautioned him to take it easy, while Ida insisted on helping him. Midoriya, however, insisted he could manage on his own and walked toward the locker room. The others watched him with concern, particularly the girls, who felt distressed that he might be struggling alone. Kendo wanted to express her gratitude for his bravery but couldn't shake her worry for him. Later that night at the orphanage, after settling the children for bed, Midoriya prepared to sleep. However, memories of the villainous attack flooded back to him, reminding him of the separation from his classmates and the battle he had fought. He looked at his right hand, the one that had delivered the decisive blow, and reflected on the pain it had caused him. Though he appeared calm on the outside, the experience had left a deep mark on him. As he lay there, he thought about his classmates and their well-being, but sleep eluded him. Meanwhile, at the League of Villains hideout, Shigaraki was seething with anger after their plan had been thwarted by a first-year student. Kurojiiri attempted to speak, but they were interrupted by the arrival of Torvald and Sakura, who criticized Shigaraki for his failure. Shigaraki lashed out at them, blaming their underestimation of Midoriya for the loss. Torvald and Sakura retorted, asserting that Shigaraki's Nomu had been too weak to handle Midoriya. Before tensions escalated, a monitor flickered to life, revealing All for One. He urged everyone to calm down and suggested they needed to study their enemies more closely. Shigaraki protested, insisting that Midoriya was a significant threat. All for One acknowledged this, stating that they needed to intensify their efforts and keep a close watch on Izuku Midoriya, as there were unresolved matters concerning him. A week passed since the incident at USJ, and Principal Nizu announced a break for classes A and B to recover. While most students spent time with family or friends, Midoriya remained isolated, still shaken by the events. Unbeknownst to him, his classmates were searching for him, worried about his absence. The girls, still in their hero costumes, roamed the school asking teachers if they had seen him, but to no avail. Their concern deepened when they tried to reach out to Midoriya, only to receive no response. His phone had been damaged during the fight with the Nomu, leaving him unaware of the calls from the girls. As Midoriya reflected on the Nomu and his need for growth, he also pondered the villain's words. He thought about the creature, recalling how it seemed to suffer, its eyes almost pleading for help. Just then, he was snapped out of his thoughts by the sound of little footsteps approaching. He turned to see Anya walking toward him. Anya expressed her concern for him, insisting he couldn't lie because he was known for it. Midoriya sighed, acknowledging her quirk's effectiveness, and smiled as she nodded. Anya then declared herself as Dr. Anya, and climbed onto his bed. Midoriya hesitated, not wanting to worry her with the details of the fight, but her puppy dog eyes made it impossible to refuse. He began to recount the events from a week ago when his class was supposed to learn about rescue training but instead faced real villains. Anya gasped in surprise, her eyes wide with excitement, urging him to continue. Midoriya shared the story of the ambush, omitting the more intense details of his confrontation with the Nomu. Anya was captivated, mimicking his heroic punch and declaring her intent to help him stop the villains. They played superheroes for a while, drawing in other children until the room was filled with laughter and energy. Eventually, everyone grew tired, and Midoriya decided to check the records at the front desk. As he searched, he realized he hadn't seen Torvald and Sakura for days, raising his concern. Just then, a lovely young woman with light skin, black hair, and reddish eyes approached him, snapping him out of his thoughts. She wore her hair in a stylish manner and had dangling earrings that caught the light. Midoriya was momentarily taken aback by her beauty. She repeated her greeting, bringing him back to the moment. He apologized and asked how he could assist her. She expressed her desire to see the children, explaining her deep love for kids and how she had noticed her own daughter feeling lonely. Midoriya listened, pondering the connection between mothers and their children. He invited her to see the kids, and she eagerly accepted. Once he had everything ready, he led her to a room filled with children playing with the few toys they had. The orphanage often struggled for funding, with the individuals in charge taking most of the money for themselves. To support the children, Midoriya had taken on extra work, mostly using his earnings for food rather than new toys or activities. The young woman was enchanted by the sight of the children, her smile radiating warmth. She exclaimed how beautiful and charming they all were. Midoriya agreed, sharing in her joy. Anya approached, curious about the newcomer. As Midoriya began to introduce her, the woman interrupted, finding Anya adorable. Midoriya introduced Anya as the girl he had found as a baby. Both Anya and the woman expressed surprise simultaneously, prompting Midoriya to share the story of how he discovered Anya on a rainy day when he was 12. He recounted how he had heard strange noises in an alley and found two shadowy figures leaving a box behind. Upon investigating, he discovered a crying baby girl inside, abandoned by her parents. He had picked her up, found a note asking for someone to care for her, and decided to take her to the orphanage. With that, the bond between Midoriya, Anya, and the young woman began to grow, united by their shared love for the children and the hope for a brighter future. There had been many setbacks, from her being adopted to every parent being apprehensive about her quirk, but he was always there to watch over her. As the flashback ended, Midoriya shared the story of how Anya came to be with them. Anya and the lady listened intently, captivated by the tale. Tears welled in Anya's eyes as she realized how much Midoriya had influenced her life. She rushed to him and embraced him tightly, overwhelmed with emotion. Anya expressed her gratitude, acknowledging that he was the reason she was here. The lady, observing the heartfelt moment, expressed her sympathy for Anya, sharing her own experiences of growing up with just her baby brother. She spoke of the hard work she put in to provide for them and how meeting her husband had been the best decision of her life. After hearing the lady's story, she made a joyful declaration. She had decided to adopt Anya. Midoriya was taken aback by the news, filled with excitement at the thought of Anya having a loving family. The lady lifted Anya, who was still processing the information, and asked her if she wanted to be part of their family. Anya hesitated, glancing at Midoriya, unsure of how he would feel about this. Midoriya's thoughts were a mix of joy and concern. He wanted Anya to have a wonderful family, but he worried she might hesitate to leave him. When Midoriya realized Anya could read his thoughts, it startled her. The lady, intrigued, asked Anya if her quirk allowed her to read minds. After a moment of hesitation, Anya nodded. The lady then shared her own thoughts, complimenting Anya's amazing quirk, which surprised Anya, as she had often felt that her abilities were seen negatively. Encouraged by Midoriya's supportive smile, Anya hugged the lady tightly, tears of happiness streaming down her face as she exclaimed her agreement to join the family. The atmosphere was filled with joy as they proceeded to the front desk to finalize the adoption. With the papers signed, Anya officially had a family of her own. Curious about the lady, Midoriya asked for her name. She introduced herself as Yayorozu, prompting Midoriya to connect the dots. He realized she was the mother of his classmate, Momo Yayorozu. Their conversation revealed that Momo often spoke highly of him, which surprised Midoriya. As the day progressed, it was time for Anya to leave for her new home. They exchanged heartfelt goodbyes, with Anya expressing how much she would miss him. Midoriya reassured her that they could visit each other, and with that, Anya walked away with her new mom, glancing back until they could no longer see each other. Midoriya stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of sadness and longing. Another child had found a home, and he felt the weight of his own situation. He understood it wasn't Anya's fault, but the feeling lingered. He turned and walked away, seeking solace in the park nearby. As he wandered through the park, he admired the beauty around him. Children played joyfully, surrounded by loving parents calling them for meals or to leave. Midoriya felt a pang of sadness, wishing for the same kind of family. Memories of his past flooded back, including the numerous interviews he had endured in search of a family. He recalled the hurtful words from Torvald and Sakura, which had haunted him during his childhood. Despite the pain, he remembered a friend who had helped him through those tough times, a blonde girl with 2 ponytails. She had been adopted, while he remained alone. He looked up, watching families enjoy their time together, feeling a deep sense of longing. Suddenly, a voice called out to him, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Akiza Izinski, dressed in a stylish outfit that caught his eye. Midoriya was surprised to see her there and greeted her. They exchanged pleasantries, with Akiza asking how he had been. Midoriya, caught off guard, lied about simply enjoying the park scenery, relieved when she seemed to believe him. Everyone was worried about Midoriya since the USJ. Akiza confirmed that many had been looking for him, even the girls had tried to reach out, but he had simply vanished. When she asked why, Midoriya explained that his phone had broken, showing her the cracked screen. Akiza inquired about when it had happened, and he speculated it might have been during the battles against the villains or the creature at the USJ. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose in frustration. Midoriya apologized for causing them worry, and Akiza reassured him that it was fine but requested he let them know he was okay before disappearing again. He agreed, and a silence settled between them as Akiza approached and asked if she could sit beside him. He welcomed her, and they sat together on the bench, both lost in thought as they recalled the events at the USJ. They struggled to find the right words to say to each other. Akiza often kept her distance from her classmates, leading to limited interactions. Although she engaged with them for schoolwork, casual conversations were rare. During the incident at the USJ, she had perceived Midoriya as cowardly, only to later witness his bravery in fighting off a monstrous creature. This left her unsure of how to approach him. Meanwhile, Midoriya was troubled by the thought of having killed that creature in front of everyone, fearing that Akiza might see him as a freak because of his strength. He regretted raising his voice at her, believing it had been harsh. As they sat in silence, Midoriya was about to speak when Akiza unexpectedly apologized. Confused, he asked what she was sorry for, and she explained that it was for her earlier words on the boat. He reassured her that it was okay and that he wouldn't blame her if he had actually done what she accused him of. Akiza acknowledged that he had been following their teacher's orders to help them and admitted that her words had been rude. Midoriya smiled and told her he had forgiven her. Surprised, Akiza asked why. He admitted that he didn't know her well, but he sensed she wasn't a bad person, just someone who had been hurt. He offered his support, stating that he wouldn't pry into her past but was there if she needed someone to talk to. This was the first time someone had shown willingness to listen to her problems, and it made her hesitate, as she had never shared her feelings with anyone, not even her parents. After taking a deep breath, she decided to open up. She began her story, recounting her childhood. Her family was the second wealthiest in Japan, while the Yaoyorozu family held the top position. Though the Yaoyorozu family was genuinely kind, her own family masked a deep-seated resentment towards them. Akiza had never understood the reason for this animosity until she learned that the Yaoyorozu family received more love and appreciation, along with better business deals. Her parents constantly tried to outshine them but always fell short. Despite the wealth, Akiza found her childhood dull and spent most of her time alone at home, as her parents were preoccupied with their rivalry. When they did spend time with her, it was solely to prepare her for a future in the family business. She was homeschooled, leaving her with few friends. To fill her free time, she read extensively and discovered comic books during a trip to town. She became captivated by stories of superheroes, particularly Wonder Woman, who inspired her with her strength and courage. Akiza also stumbled upon old magazines featuring a pro-hero named the lovely Lady Nagant, who was renowned for her skills as a sniper and assassin. She admired her greatly and dreamed of becoming a hero like her. However, when her parents discovered her secret passion for comics, they reacted with anger, insisting she should focus on the family business instead. This confrontation led to a moment of defiance, as Akiza expressed her frustration at their neglect and obsession with success, revealing her desire to be more than just a figure in their plans. When was the last time the family did anything together that didn't involve work? The silence from her parents was deafening, and just as her father was about to speak, she pressed on, unaware that it would lead to a pivotal moment in her life. Akiza, filled with determination, expressed her feelings. She declared that she wanted to be a pro-hero, just like Lady Nagant. The reaction from her parents was explosive. They vehemently opposed her dream, insisting they would never allow her to pursue such a path. In their anger, they discarded everything she cherished, including her notebook filled with ideas about becoming a hero. The emotional blow left her shattered. From that day forward, Akiza chose silence over conflict with her parents. They eventually decided to send her to a boarding school to focus on her studies. At first, life there felt normal, but soon, the quirks of her fellow students began to manifest. When Akiza's quirk finally emerged, it was a card featuring a cute monster that she brought to life. The ability to summon real monsters earned her admiration from her peers, and it reignited her dream of becoming a hero like Lady Nagant. As her popularity grew, many students sought her friendship, but Akiza soon realized that their interest was more about her family's reputation than genuine connection. This realization fueled her frustration, leading her to distance herself from others, particularly the boys who only saw her for her looks. By the time she graduated, Akiza had risen to the top of her class. While other students celebrated with their parents, she searched for her own but only found their butler, Alfred, waiting by the family limo. Alfred had always been more of a parent to her than her actual parents. When they had discarded her belongings, he had secretly recovered and hidden them from her parents. Seeing him brought her joy, and she rushed to embrace him. Alfred greeted her warmly, expressing his happiness at their reunion. After they released their hug, Akiza asked if her parents had come, to which Alfred regretfully replied that they had not. He had tried to persuade them, but it had been futile. Akiza reassured him that she hadn't expected them to show up and expressed her gratitude for his support. Alfred offered to take her home, and during the drive, Akiza shared her acceptance into the recommendation exams at UA. While he was proud, she insisted he keep it from her parents, and after some hesitation, he agreed to tell them she would be studying abroad, a story they would believe would benefit their company. That marked the beginning of her secret journey to becoming a hero. Midoriya listened, astonished by her story. He found it hard to believe that anyone could treat their child that way, and he empathized with her struggles, realizing they were more similar than he had thought. He expressed his sorrow for what she had endured, to which Akiza responded that she had learned to cope and wanted to help others in her own way. She looked at him with determination, and Midoriya shared his own experiences of wanting to be a hero to assist those who were overlooked. Their shared resolve inspired Akiza to propose they work hard together to become the best heroes. They exchanged a fist bump, both smiling brightly at each other. Midoriya then asked about Monoma in her class, prompting a groan from Akiza as she recalled his arrogance. She described how Monoma was always boasting about his class's superiority and how he had been upset that Midoriya had saved others instead of him. Midoriya admitted he often felt at a loss when dealing with Monoma's antics. Akiza remarked that if she were in his position, she would have lost her patience long ago. Midoriya chuckled, acknowledging her point. Akiza then revealed that not everyone in Class B supported Monoma, explaining that Kendo had suggested combining the classes to foster unity. This surprised Midoriya, who thought it would be a chaotic situation. Akiza reassured him that his class representatives could handle it, and when Midoriya guessed that Monoma had reacted poorly to the news, she nodded, confirming his suspicion. Midoriya playfully mimicked Monoma's outraged response, causing Akiza to burst into laughter, unable to contain herself. She tried to stifle her laughter, but Midoriya's playful demeanor only made it harder. He asked what was wrong, and she insisted he not look at her while she laughed. Midoriya, amused, inquired if it was because of her laugh, to which she protested, claiming she hated it. He countered that her laugh was adorable, which made her protest even more vehemently. Midoriya teased her about her lack of humor, and Akiza, with a mischievous glint in her eye, prepared to challenge that notion. Akiza playfully mimicked Bakugo, saying, "Deku, why are you ahead of me? You're supposed to be behind me because you are useless. I'm supposed to be number one. Aya, Deku." Her impersonation made Midoriya laugh heartily. He remarked that it sounded just like him, causing Akiza to laugh even harder. Nearby, a limo was parked along the sidewalk of the park. Inside, Alfred watched the scene unfold, pleased to see Akiza smiling again after such a long time. As they calmed down, Akiza couldn't help but smile at Midoriya. Unbeknownst to her, a deeper connection was forming between them. After a moment of silence, she decided to ask him something that had been on her mind. She inquired if she could ask him a question, to which he nodded. Akiza noticed something was troubling him. Since the incident at Yuzei, he had appeared disturbed, as if he had witnessed something traumatic. Concerned, she asked if he was okay. Midoriya seemed confused by her question, prompting her to clarify that she had noticed something bothering him since the USJ. He hesitated, looking down, and she noticed his hands trembling as they moved closer together. His expression was filled with nervousness and fear. She urged him not to hide his feelings, reminding him that she listened to her problems and wanted to hear his. Midoriya looked at her, realizing she genuinely cared. After a long pause, he finally spoke, revealing that he felt like a monster. Akiza was taken aback, asking what had led him to feel that way. He explained that he was haunted by what had happened with the Nomu, admitting that he had intended to tire it out or knock it out, but instead, he had ended its life. The thought of potentially harming a person terrified him. Akiza quickly grasped the depth of his trauma, understanding that he feared he might hurt someone again. She knew he hadn't meant to harm the Nomu, but he was punishing himself for it. He continued, expressing that he had distanced himself because he didn't know how to face anyone after what had happened, fearing they might see him as a monster or freak. Akiza was shocked by his words and placed her hand on his, urging him to look at her. She reassured him that he was not a monster or freak, he had acted to protect everyone. A small smile formed on her face as she spoke, and Midoriya was taken aback by her kindness. She emphasized that everyone cared about him and that his absence had only increased their worry. Midoriya stammered, trying to explain himself, but Akiza interrupted him, acknowledging that he had been scared of their opinions. She gently turned his head to face her, assuring him that everyone thought he was a hero, even the teachers, and that they all admired him. Feeling encouraged, Midoriya began to believe her words. He smiled back, grateful for her support. He thanked her, feeling uplifted. Suddenly, Akiza hugged him, catching him off guard, but he embraced her in return, sharing a moment of warmth. They remained in that embrace for a while, and Alfred watched with delight, pleased to see Akiza returning to her cheerful self. After a moment, they released each other, and Midoriya reflected on her words, feeling a newfound determination. He declared that he would not let his fears hold him back. He resolved to work on his quirk and stand alongside his classmates, not just as their representative but as their friend. Akiza agreed, affirming that they would support each other no matter what. Midoriya attempted to call their friends but realized his phone was broken, leaving him unable to reach out. He expressed his frustration, but before he could dwell on it, Akiza took his hand, leading him toward the limo. Curious, he asked where they were going, and she explained that she wanted to ask Alfred to take them to the mall. Midoriya was puzzled but followed her lead. Once they reached the limo, Akiza requested Alfred to drive them to the mall. He complied, and as they settled into the car, Akiza encouraged Midoriya to join her. He hesitated, unsure, but she reassured him that she wanted to get to know him better and might even share details about her quirk. Excited by the prospect, Midoriya pulled out his notebook, eager to learn more. They set off to the mall, where they explored various stores and shared their interests, enjoying each other's company and having a wonderful time together. Akiza enjoyed Midoriya's company, feeling a sense of anticipation building within her. After a while, they decided to get something to eat, but Akiza spotted a store she had been hoping to find. She turned to Midoriya and asked him to wait outside for her. Midoriya agreed and found a bench to sit on. As he looked around, he noticed groups of friends hanging out together, which made him smile. Just then he heard a familiar voice call his name. It was Anne, who approached him with excitement and hugged him tightly. She expressed her concern, asking what had happened to him and why everyone had been worried. Midoriya reassured her that he was fine and apologized for causing any worry. They released each other from the hug, and Anne continued to inquire about his phone, revealing that she and the girls had been anxious to hear from him. Midoriya explained that his phone was broken and showed her the damaged device, and understood and nodded in response. Just then, Akiza returned, surprised to see him there. The two girls exchanged friendly greetings, and Midoriya was taken aback by their camaraderie. Akiza then presented Midoriya with a bag, urging him to open it. When he pulled out a brand new phone, he was astonished. Akiza explained that it was a thank-you gift for saving everyone at the USJ. Midoriya hesitated, feeling uncomfortable accepting such an expensive gift, but chimed in, reminding him that it was rude to refuse a gift, especially from someone as kind as Akiza. After considering their words, he decided to accept the gift, expressing his gratitude to Akiza, who was delighted. With and now joining them, the three friends spent time together at the mall. Midoriya shared with and what he had told Akiza at the park, and she listened intently. They went to get food, and explained how she and Akiza had bonded after the USJ incident, discovering they had much in common. She mentioned that many students from both classes had exchanged numbers, and Akiza realized she had forgotten to do that. After helping Midoriya set up his new phone, he got contacts from most of their classmates. Midoriya then had an idea and suggested a hangout for the following Saturday, and was enthusiastic, and Akiza agreed, curious about the plan. Midoriya explained that he thought it would be nice for their classes to spend time together, and understood and smiled, while Akiza offered to call Momo to help organize the event. They all agreed to finish their hangout and prepare for the upcoming class gathering. Later, when Midoriya returned to the orphanage, he felt much better. He found his friend, who had been watching over the place for him, and they greeted each other. Midoriya apologized for taking so long and explained that he had been hanging out with friends, feeling a bit nervous as he rubbed the back of his neck. His friend encouraged him, reminding him that it was important to enjoy time with peers. Midoriya expressed concern about leaving his friend to handle everything alone while he had fun, but his friend reassured him that they could manage. They discussed how well-mannered the kids were, and Midoriya shared his secrets for taking care of them. His friend was amazed, realizing that many parents would love to know those tips. After their conversation, Midoriya checked on the kids and found them asleep. He noticed that 3 children had been adopted while he was out, and he felt relieved knowing they would be in good homes. Finally, he went to check on a couple he had concerns about, only to find them passed out in their room, surrounded by empty bottles and other substances. Midoriya shook his head and made his way to his room to get ready for bed. After attending to his evening routine, he settled into sleep with a broad smile on his face. In his dreams, he envisioned the remarkable plan he was crafting, which felt like the most incredible dream he had ever experienced.